Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the Planning Commission of Columbus. The date is July 20th, 2022, and the time is 6:37. The first thing on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical problems with the cameras or something. I don't know, the operation. We're going to go on to item number 3. We need a motion on approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Yeah, this is Chris. I will make a motion to approve the amended Planning Commission agenda for 7/20/2022.
We have a second?
This is Barb Bobick. I'll second that.
Okay, we'll take a vote, starting with Chris.
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
We'll go on to item number 4. It's a motion approval of May 19th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
This is Barb Bobick. So moved.
We have a second.
This is Bob. I'll second that.
We'll have to go to a vote. Chris?
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Go on to item number 5. Approval of the June 1st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting minutes. We have a motion.
This is Bob. I'll move.
This is Chris, second.
We'll go to a vote. Chris?
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 6.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I just need to remind everyone to please speak into their microphone and really lean into the microphone. We are doing sound into the community room, and they will not be able to hear you unless you're really speaking into the microphone.
Thank you. We're going to go on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is a public hearing and discussion, 9056 Broadway Avenue Northeast, Kennel Interim Use Permit, Glenn and Sue Koth, enclosures C and enclosure E. Ella, would you like to read the notice as published in the Forest Lake Times?
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard. The hearing will be conducted in person and by interactive technology at the Columbus City Hall, located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to consider a request for an interim use permit to operate a residential dog kennel with 4 or more dogs. Members of the public interested in attending in person, monitoring the meetings, or want more information should contact the city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website at columbusmn.us. The hearings shall continue until all evidence and testimony have been received. Applicant Glenn Koth, property owner Glenn Koth and Susan Koth, property location 9056 West Broadway Avenue Northeast, Columbus, Minnesota 55025, PIN 01-32-22-33-0002, legal description as written, signed Elizabeth Mersko, zoning administrator.
Thank you, Ella. At this time, for the record, would Glenn or Sue Koth, the applicants, come up and have a chair if they're here and announce their presence?
Didn't you get a letter saying they wouldn't be present?
Well, are they
There
going
was
to
one
be?
in the packet.
Is it going to be in a Zoom?
No.
You know, Mr. Chair, we did receive message that there was a possibility that there was a conflict and he would not be able to attend. And in that case, he indicated that he would let his application stand, and we'll try to answer any questions that we have knowledge of, whether it's our associate planner, or myself if you've got questions. Otherwise, we can go through and continue with and hold the public hearing.
Okay. Well, this is just a renewal of a dog kennel IUP. It's a 10-year IUP, so I guess we'll ask the city, ask the public? Well, I haven't opened up the public hearing. I just want to ask, have we had any complaints? Oh, or should I go to the public hearing?
Anoka County Sheriff was contacted on July 16th, and there were no records of complaints, and there were also no records of complaints from our animal control person.
All right, thank you, Frank. Okay, it's time to open up the public hearing for the public. Anyone who has any interest in this matter and wants to present testimony as evidence on the issues, please acknowledge themselves by stating their name and address, after which you have the floor to speak. Hearing no one coming forth, we'll close the public hearing. We'll have a discussion.
Ron?
Yes, this is the public hearing for the dog kennel for Glen Clothy. So is there anyone, whether they're in the community center or in the council chambers, which is wishing to speak, just let us know or run in here, but otherwise we'll continue with our discussion.
I keep forgetting there's people in the other room. So do they have a microphone back there to come forth?
They do.
Okay, so I'll give them another 30 seconds. Okay, nobody's come forth, so we'll close the public hearing. Open up for discussion among the members.
I really have nothing. It looks like their narrative that they've, had IUP for the last 10 years. There's been no complaints. It looks like the only reason they have to have the IUP is because the number of dogs that they have personally. It's not for boarding or anything. So because of our city ordinance, what is it? It's based on acreage, isn't it? And they're over 4 acres or 4 dogs for their 20 acres. Is that correct?
It is. That is correct. It is. If you have 4 or more dogs, then you need a kennel license. And we no longer have a license program. We require them to go through an interim use permit process. And this is the one permit that is for a 10-year period of time, and it is cited in the code that it's a 10-year period of time.
Still, I mean, reading their narrative, it sounds like the dogs are their life and they take really good care of them. So I have no problem with this IUP.
That's being pretty harsh, isn't it? Euthanized? Bob, you have any questions?
In reviewing the information of the application, I think that they've taken all the precautions necessary to maintain a good, solid environment, and so I have no further questions.
Barb?
I agree with both Chris and Bob. I see no reason why they couldn't have their,
Well, I agree with all of you. I happen to know that Total Recall, I've been there before, and he was, Glenn was a police officer for St. Paul and trained dogs, so be it. Should we take a recommendation then? To recommend it for the city council for the next week? Take a vote?
motion to approve? Or,
I'm sorry, what?
you mean a motion to approve the?
Yeah, a motion to recommend it.
Yeah.
Anybody want to make it?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll make a motion to recommend the interim use permit for 5 dogs for Glenn and Sue Koth at, 9056 West Broadway Avenue with the approval with findings of facts 1 through 13 and recommendations and conditions 1 through 26 and forward to the city council for approval.
I'll second that. Now we can take a vote.
Chris, aye.
Well, I should say, is there any
Discussion.
discussion or comments?
Nothing.
Hearing none.
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Did we get a second? You seconded it, right?
I did.
Oh, you
Ron did, yes.
We're going to go on to item number 7 on the agenda tonight. It's a public hearing. Park construction, conditional use permit, Jeff Carlson. Enclosures A, enclosures B, enclosures F, enclosures G, enclosures H. And also, please bring enclosure A with you to the meeting. Ella, would you read the notice that's published?
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, July 20th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard. The hearing will be conducted in person and by interactive technology at the Columbus City Hall located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Columbus, Minnesota, to consider a request for a conditional use permit to permit a contractor shop consisting of an office, mechanical shop, equipment storage, material storage, and crushing activity in the commercial/industrial district. Members of the public interested in attending in person or monitoring the meetings should contact the city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website for information at columbusmn.us. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. Applicant is Carlson Group LLC, Jeff Carlson. Property owner Lucille V. Waldock LLC. Property location is vacant properties, PIN 333222230004, Columbus, Minnesota. Legal descriptions as written, signed Elizabeth Mursko, zoning administrator.
Thank you, Ella. Well, usually at this time, I say, for the record, would Jeff Carlson and the applicant come up and sit at the front table, but I gather that's who you are with LLC, Carlson Group?
That's me.
Are you Jeff
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can we call you Jeff?
You may.
Okay, and you have 3 other associates with it? Are they going to do any of the speaking?
They will probably do some speaking, yes.
Okay, well, just for the record, if you can move, we need your name and address, even though we have it here. If you can just give your name and address, Jeff, and then go down the line with each person, the name.
Okay, I'm Jeff Carlson, president of Park Construction. My home address is 11681 St. Andrews Circle, Blaine, Minnesota.
Thank you. And you might have to move that mic up, and move it. You can go to your left or right, whoever.
I'm Dan Friedner. I'm a commercial real estate broker with Newmark. I live in Lindstrom.
Okay. Your first name again?
Dan
And your last name?
Friedner,
You want to spell that?
Friedner.
We do that so the secretary type and can figure it out. And then the party next to you, off to your left.
I'm Craig Kepler. I'm a lawyer at the law firm of Best and Flanagan. Kepler is Kepler. The address is 60 South 6th Street, 27th floor, Minneapolis, 94102.
Thank you.
I'm Crystal Black with Black Engineering. My address is 32210 Zion Street, Cambridge, Minnesota.
Crystal, right?
Yep. Crystal, yep.
I'm getting kind of old. I have bad ears. Did you get all that down? Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, Jeff. The commission received your application for the conditional use permit along with lots of data in your narrative statements. There was a number of narrative statements in here, and I have to say it's fairly large and complete. As is the normal protocol, and for the record and public, could you brief us or give us a presentation about what you plan to do on this property?
Yes, I can. Thank you for having us here tonight. First of all, I have a little PowerPoint I'll bring up in a few minutes, or Elizabeth will. But first of all, I'll just give you a little history. Park Construction's over 100 years old. My great-grandfather started the business and down on Park Avenue and hauled goods and services and coals and moved pianos and everything they could to make a dollar and survive. We made it through the Great Depression, and It turned into Park Construction in 1916. Today, we're a general contractor that builds roads, does a lot of flood control work for the Corps of Engineers. That's mostly out of state. We work all over the Midwest, but our main work is Minnesota and North Dakota. We have an office in North Dakota and an office here. I'm fifth generation. My nephew's in the business. So I'm fourth generation. My nephew's fifth. We've been local to the area for, we were downtown and then we were in Fridley for 50, 60 years. And we've outgrown our space. So we're looking for, we found the place on Lake Drive and it fits us very well. And we plan on servicing our equipment there and having outside storage. And we are asking for a conditional use permit to recycle concrete, along with the other contractors on Lake Drive that do the same thing. So that's a little bit about myself. You can ask me any questions, interrupt me anytime.
No, we'll wait till your presentation's done.
Okay.
And then we'll have some questions.
Yeah, the main thing on my presentation was I know there's a lot of concern about crushing concrete, and people throw up their arms and they don't want to have it in their backyard. And we met with the city and we talked to them about our plan, and they made recommendations on how we could do screening and keep the noise from leaving the property that we're buying. And we made those changes and incorporated it into our design. Can you switch it to, yeah. So again, we're a family-owned and operated since 1916 with 5 generations. We're a heavy civil contractor that does excavating, grading, underground utilities, paving, and some concrete foundations. And our customers are the federal government, state and local government, commercial and private. This picture is a depiction of what we're proposing. On the south side of the property is where the main drive will come in off the road, and to the left of that is where the crushing, one would be a rubble pile and the other one would be a crushed pile, and the other pile is just topsoil pile. And then to the west of that is just some equipment parking. We propose to put, after the city recommendations, a berm along the southwest corner of the property, and then running straight to the east, a 10-foot high berm and a 8 to 10-foot fence to help with blocking any view and keeping the aesthetics. To the right is north, but to the east is the long length of the berm. There's a pipeline that runs through the property to the left of the driveway, and then it tees and runs north and west on the westerly part of the property. And all that is wetlands on that westerly half. And you see the ponds in there. Those are infiltration ponds that we have to put in for design purposes. The remainder of the area is used for parking our trucks. We currently have 13 dump trucks, and we have some trucks with trailers to move equipment, and the rest of it's heavy equipment. Keep in mind that that equipment mainly stays out of the yard. We bring it in to fix it. It's where we do our repairs. We'll leave our equipment on job sites over the winter and then start it up and get that back to work in the spring. So we don't have all of our equipment in there at one time. We also have miscellaneous other pieces of equipment for storage that we use, small attachments, pipe material, trench boxes for safety, That's a lot of miscellaneous stuff that's involved in construction. The shop area and office is 15,000 square feet. And that's where we'll do our maintenance and washing of equipment. And then there's a warehouse to the north that'll be just cold storage for storing parts and supplies inside. So that's the layout of the rendering. Does anybody have any questions on this picture?
Not at the moment. You still got more at the presentation?
Yeah, there's another slide, a few more.
We just,
This is a picture, a rendering of our office, or shop and office, and the warehouse that our architect did for us. Next slide. And why we're here today, to request a conditional use permit to allow for recycling of concrete and asphalt, provide education on the recycling process, and answer any questions you might have. Next slide. This is the size of machine that we use. We load it with an excavator that sits on top of the rubble pile, and he dumps it into the crushing equipment, and then it spits out onto a conveyor, which stacks it up in a pile. Next slide. This was a video. I don't know if Elizabeth, were you able to make this work? Oh, the arrow down there in the lower left. Can you click on that? Lasts a minute. It doesn't last very long. That's basically how you crush the concrete. You dump it in there, and it busts it all up into little pieces and goes through a screen and spits it out the end and goes onto a conveyor, and it piles it up. We do not do the crushing ourselves. We outsource that to another vendor. The same vendor that Forest Lake used a month ago right up here on Lake Drive and crushed their pile. Next slide, please.
Okay.
There we go. This is the location, current conditions of where the crushing pile would be and crushing operation, and this looking north to the nearest resident, or one of the residences to the north behind those trees. Click to the next slide.
Mr. Chair, I need to take a pause. I lost the internet.
we're going to pause?
Pause, just a pause.
Just a pause. That's why that thing's going around in circles there?
Yeah.
I got a quick question while we're waiting here. So you don't own the crusher?
No.
No, it's just brought in?
Yep.
Okay.
And this is the same location. Nope, next slide, please, Elizabeth. Looking west towards the Wagaman property, and this is where the crushing operation would be.
I didn't get my internet back.
Hold on one moment. Because we have a number of people who are signed in to listen to the public hearing and to listen to the presentation online, if we can just pause for a moment, even take a brief recess so that we can get the Zoom back up and running, and make sure that we have everyone who has requested to participate participating.
Any other,
Thank
can I
you.
take any questions now or no?
If we could just wait, that would be
Okay.
great. Thank you so much. So it appears as though the wireless as well as the phones for the city have gone down, and they need to be restarted over in the Public Works building. So, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we take a brief recess.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I would recommend that we take a brief recess to allow staff to get the internet back up and running, and then return in 15 minutes.
Sounds great. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes. It's 7:06, so probably 7:20. No, yeah, about 7:20.
We're not going too far.
We'll start up the meeting. I guess we're going to continue the meeting.
No, we are, Mr. Chair, we are back.
Back online?
In full session. We are back with our recording, and so I would ask that you call this meeting to order, and we move forward with the testimony of the applicant.
Okay, all right. Where did we stop?
We stopped, we took a brief recess that turned into a slightly longer recess, and now we are back in open session.
Okay, all right.
And I believe, Mr. Chair, we were looking at, we stopped at this slide that's on there, the proposed recycling site looking north. And I will turn the floor back over to Jeff Carlson, President of Park Construction.
I guess you're on, Jeff.
I'm on again, thank you. As we were sitting here waiting for the internet to come back online, we were talking and I was looking at a noise chart that's in my presentation coming up. And I just want to make the comment that the noise decibels from a crushing operation are less than a noisy restaurant, which would be similar to how noisy it was in here, why we were all waiting, talking back and forth. So just wanted to say that. That's the picture of our crushing location looking north. And the next slide is a picture of where the crushing location will be looking west. And that's Mr. Wagaman's horse barn there, the red barn there. The next slide is the distances measured off, 1,330 feet to the west and 1,730 feet to the north, to the residents to the north. Some of the concerns that we thought about, that we think about it all the time. I will say that safety is our #1 priority at Park Construction, to keep our employees safe and the surrounding public while we're working safe. We have a very good safety record. We work with OSHA all the time. And so we thought about what the concerns that the neighbors would have, and we came up with noise, dust, any type of hazards, the screening of the site, and how it looks, the aesthetics. The noise levels, you can see from this chart, from 75 feet away, crushing operations is 75 decibels. City traffic from inside a car is 85 decibels. A food processor, you guys can read it yourself, 95 decibels. Jackhammers, 130 decibels. What does it say? Average office noise is 70 decibels. So the old thought that the crushing is loud and noisy, and it's not that loud. And I put the distances in there to show how far they will be away from the residences. And without any screening, like a berm or a fence, even without that, the noise dissipates as it gets further away. The decibels go down. Now, when you put a screening up, because we don't want them, we want to be good neighbors. We don't want them to look at our crushing operation. We want them to enjoy their property. And so with that up as well, it's going to block the noise even more. They won't even hear it. So I'll go to my next slide. That's just a picture of a crusher that was at Forest Lake Contracting, and it was at 75 feet, it was 76.8 decibels. The noise approximate duration is 4 weeks. We would crush from 7 to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. The distance, I already said this in the previous slide, is 1,330 feet to the west and 1,730 feet to the north for the closest residents. And we would screen it by a berm, fence, buildings, trees would be screening, and it would decrease the sound decibels. The backup alarms on our trucks are all white noise, and the slamming of the tailgates we would prohibit on this site so they wouldn't have to hear any slamming of tailgates. Typically, that's just a natural habit of a truck driver to dump their load when they're hauling dirt. They back up and then they slam their tailgates to get the dirt out because the dirt sticks in it. But rubble doesn't stick, it just slides out. So that will be taken care of that way. Next slide, please. Dust. During hauling activities, we will use water to eliminate the dust. Our vendor that does the crushing has a written safety plan on how to handle the dust and mitigate any hazardous chemicals and silicas in that. And they use a chemical added to the water to suppress the dust and any silica that's in the air. That is, I saw on one of the latest attachments today that they added to the meeting today that somebody said that how do they water it? Well, they water it by, they have a, they hook a hose up to the machine, and the machine's got lines in it with sprayers that sprays the conveyor belt, that sprays the crusher, it sprays where they generate the dust. So it keeps the dust down. So that's how they do it. Next slide. Silica dust. Well, how we manage it is implement the appropriate controls to mitigate risk to acceptable levels. The acceptable levels are set by OSHA, not by me. We use personal protective equipment as far as glasses, hard hats, respirators if needed, but we don't use respirators because we control the dust. Air monitoring, we monitor the air. If it gets bad, then we shut down. OSHA approved suppressant, that's what we use. And then we have a safety officer that conducts a risk assessment on what are the hazards of the job that we're currently doing on all of our jobs. Every day he's out doing risk assessments to keep us safe. And then we train our employees, and our vendor trains their employees on the risks associated with any type of work. There's always risks, whatever you do. Next slide, please. The aesthetics. So after meeting with the city, I will say we wanted to put the crushing operation in the southwest corner closest to the Wagamans. When we first designed this, they made recommendations to move it away from them. So we did. And then they said, screen it as best you can. So we screened it by putting a 10-foot berm in and then putting an 8 to 10-foot fence in. And then we had somebody do a rendering, block engineering to, this is what you would see looking from their house. That's the view they would see. They would not see any of the equipment parked. They'd see the trees in the background. They'd see the top of our buildings. And that's all. Next slide, if there is. I don't think there is.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
That's all I had for right now.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I guess I want to go on to one more point here before we get into questioning, and I'll get to that in a minute. But for the record, did you receive a report written by Dean Johnson of Resource Strategies Corporation dated July 13, 2022, noting your project with his findings of facts and issues, discussion items? And do you have any questions or comments about them that you'd like to express?
Yeah, we did get that, and we responded to that too, didn't we, Crystal?
No, this is just for the report for this meeting.
Oh.
His comments.
Okay. Yes, we did receive that.
You did receive, do you have any questions or comments?
I think his was pretty straight.
I don't think so.
His mostly went over, it was kind of mostly repeating the narrative.
And also, I'd like to note that City Engineer Kevin Bittner wrote a memorandum dated July 12th, 2022. Did you, Crystal, you kind of keep shaking your head there. Did you receive that one?
Yes, we did.
Again, do you have any questions, comments?
Let me see. Yes, I do. On item number 6.
On whose is this?
This is from Kevin Bittner's
Okay,
memorandum letter.
yep,
He talked about the the high water table in the presence of mottled soils is roughly 907. The grading plan indicates the bottom of the crushing storage area to be 906, which would be below the high water table indicated by the mottled soil. The high water table is not 907. It's 901, and that's verified by
By the watershed, yep.
by the watershed. And we have that
Okay.
documentation.
all right.
And then it also, on item number 9, I already said this, but I will repeat myself. It would be beneficial to know how the water would be applied to the crushing operation. So if we usually use, we'll park a water truck over there and run a hose over to the crushing machine, and then it sprays, it has its own pump system, and it sprays the water on the crushing operation. So while it's crushing, it keeps the dust down.
Okay,
Okay, here you go.
I have a couple of comments specifically as to those reports as well, and since you had asked the question, I thought I'd make them now. In the July 12th Bolton and Menck report, I would just note what Bolton.
Excuse me, can you pull the mic up
Oh,
closer?
I'm sorry. I would just note what Bolton and Menck says in conclusion about the traffic impact of the project. The comprehensive plan shows that in 2015, this road sees around 7,300 or so daily vehicle trips. At a heavy estimate, Bolton and Menck said that this project will add about 300. I think their math is a little bit high. I think that's probably a rounding error. The actual trips is 260, but in either event, it's going to just be a 3 to 4% increase in traffic on this stretch of road. And Bolton and Menck specifically concludes that they don't anticipate any traffic or operational issues given the improvements that are being made to the road by the Walducks. Jeff already commented on the height of the water table in the area, and of course he will provide the conclusion of an engineer on that point. As to the July 13th report from Resource Strategies, Dean Johnson, I did just have a couple of points there. They talk in point 8 about the zoning code and how the zoning code doesn't have a specific reference to concrete recycling and crushing as a conditional or permitted use. That's true. It doesn't say those words, concrete recycling. However, the zoning code, it does have some provisions that are fairly broad and open-ended, and the zoning code has to be viewed as it's been consistently applied and interpreted by the City of Columbus over the decades. And as Jeff has noted, there's multiple concrete crushing operations, and as the engineer noted, even as recently as 2008 or so, a CUP has been given in a commercial industrial zoning district property for concrete crushing, exactly the same zoning district that this property's in. The city has to treat commercial industrial properties consistently. It can't discriminate among them for uses, and consistently the city has allowed this use. I would remind the city that the other CUPs in place are CUPs. Conditional use permits can be terminated if the city believes there's a violation, and there are multiple concrete crushing operations and other commercial industrial properties. None of those CUPs have been terminated by the city. Therefore, the only real conclusion is that the city doesn't believe that's a violation of any of the CUPs up and down Lake Street. harmonious with the comprehensive plan. That's been something that's been raised a lot by many of the commentators, by the engineering firm as well. I'd like to point out a few things that the comprehensive plan says. Goal number 6, very plainly stated, allow for intensification of commercial industrial opportunities in the Lake Drive corridor. The clear intent of the city all along has been to intensify commercial industrial uses, not to limit it. I'd remind the city that this specific site is zoned commercial industrial just exactly like the Blake dewatering site just to the south, which is almost exactly the same use minus the crushing, but it's going to be staging of equipment and vehicles and materials and fixing the vehicles. It's immediately east of several of the residences on Zodiac Street that are complaining about this use. By the way, I would remind the city that there is no residence to the west of this property. There's only 2 residences even in proximity to this property at all, and both of those are very, very far away from this site. I think that Jeff's engineer is going to talk a little bit about the impact of distance on noise, but if you do the math, a 75 decibel sound at the site where the crushing is supposed to be comes to around 50 decibels by the time it reaches the distance of the residences, and that's without any screening between the crushing and the residences. 50 decibels is approximate office conversational level sound. So there's that. Back to the comprehensive plan. Expanding construction services. That's one of the goals stated in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan specifically says that they aren't going to designate more commercial industrial space because there's still developable acres currently identified as commercial industrial. The clear intent of the comprehensive plan at the time it was passed just a couple of years ago, after 2 years of work by the city, was to put uses on this land that are consistent with uses already existing on the other commercial industrial parcels located up and down Lake Drive. And again, as I noted, just recently, Blake Dewatering has been given a CUP for a use that's very, very close to this use, with the only exception being the concrete recycling. A couple of other things from that note. In paragraph 6, where the report talks about noise, they cite an inapplicable noise standard. I think Jeff's engineer will talk about the correct noise standard, but the engineering report to the city is wrong there. I would note that in paragraph 1B, that's where they mention the recent Ryback CUP, although in my opinion, all of the existing CUPs suggest that this is an appropriate use and a conditional use that's allowed by the zoning ordinance, because that's the way the city has consistently interpreted its own ordinance for decades. By the way, the ordinance was adopted in about 2002 when this was still a town, but it has remained in place unchanged with respect to commercial industrial since 2002. So there's been no changes to the ordinance that would suggest any change in the use. So the ordinance has been consistent and the interpretation has been consistent for decades. And I would suggest that the city can't discriminate against this property and treat it differently than it has treated every other commercial industrial property up and down the street. Finally, the only real issue that's been raised, in my opinion, which is a small one, by the July 13th report, has to do with whether there's any applicable setback or screening requirements that may require a little bit more screening around the piles. It's not clear whether which is the front yard and which is the side yard of this site, and the engineer suggests that might require a little bit more consideration, and depending on how that comes out, perhaps a little bit of additional screening might be needed. Of course, I think Jeff is willing to add any screening that's needed for setback purposes. So specifically with respect to the questions about those 2 reports, those are the comments I would have, and I think Jeff's engineer has a couple of comments more specific about noise.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I feel like we've already hit on the points that the sound is going to get less, obviously, the further away the house is. And he already touched base on the accurate number of decibels, too. Just for example, at 300 feet, it would be 63 decibels, and at 1,200 feet, it's 54 decibels. And then once you add in the piles, the extra distance, the berm, the fence, everything, I don't think that the noise is going to be an issue. And I think they've covered everything else that we had talked about in the memos, so that's all I have.
And I know, excuse me. One other thing I'd like to comment on is the traffic. Our traffic that we generate, typically we're going out with 12 dump trucks in the morning, and they come back at the end of the day. Yes, there's some trips where we make some rounds of rubble, but we don't haul all the rubble back to our site. That's cost prohibitive for us. We're not going to drive from Bloomington all the way up here to dump a load of rubble. We'll dump it down there at a local crushing spot. We're only going to bring in rubble if it's close to us. So that's going to limit how much rubble we're bringing in every day. We're close to our projects. And we work from April to November, and typically your removals are the first thing you do when you start a construction job. You tear up the curb, you grind the asphalt off, and you pull the sidewalk up and you haul it away so you can start grading and widening the road. So it happens in a first 2 or 3 months of work, and then we don't do much of it. It's a little spotty here and there. That's all.
Thank you. I guess we're going to go on here, and this is a big project or a lot of issues, and you brought them up earlier on page 18 of enclosure B, I think, or whatever. The ones you just had on the slide up front there. I got to get this. Anyway, I'd just like to go to those topics in a minute, but before we go there, there's a lot of paperwork here that you handed us, and I was kind of confused in the beginning on what you do. I mean, I thought, are you in the recycling business, or are you in the heavy construction business?
We're in the heavy construction business with it, which involves, that's one component of our work is recycling the material.
So what would you say on your business? Is it 10%, 20%, 50%?
Of the recycling?
No, of your business. I'm trying to figure out, like I said, most of it, when I started reading, I got this idea that you're in the recycling business.
Oh, no. Our main work is earth moving and underground utilities and paving asphalt.
Okay, fine. Before I yield the floor to any of my other commissioner members up here, I had some questions I'd like to ask you. Like I said, I went on page 17 of enclosure B, and I took off of that, and I want to start with noise. The possible concerns you said is noise. And on page 20 of enclosure B, you state that recycling takes place in the winter months, noting approximate duration is 4 weeks from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then on page 439 of enclosure A, you note crushing operations would only take place around 6 weeks a year and be done in colder weather. Hours of operation 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Months of operation 12. Could you clarify this? I mean, I see it going back and forth. One time you say you're done at 5:30. The other one says you're done at 5. One says it's 4 weeks. One says it's 6 weeks. What is?
Is that coming from the narrative?
Yes, it's coming from, I can give you the pages. It's coming from 439. And the narrative you got in here, too, on page
20.
I got it here. Anyway, it went back and forth.
Well,
Close page 20 of this enclosure B.
I'd be happy to answer that question.
Yeah, on this one here, you state 7 to 5 p.m., approximate duration, 4 weeks. And then on page 439 on this one, it says, we'll move importable crushing equipment to the site, crush materials to finished product. And it further states that the time was 4 to 5 o'clock.
4 to 5:30?
Yeah, 5:30 on this one. Hours of operation, 7 to 5:30. Then it says months of operation, 12 months.
But that's for the business, not for the recycling.
But farther up here, it says Park Construction will also run concrete recycling crushing operation on this site. Below, you will find a detailed description of how Park plans to run this operation. So I take for granted that you're running this recycling. So which one is correct?
Okay, I apologize. We're not a recycling company. We're a construction company. That's a component of it. So the recycling, we will meet all the city requirements on when we can recycle, whether it's 7 to 7 or 7 to 5:30 or 7 to 5 p.m. We'll follow the guidelines set by the city to do so. And as far as when we crush, we've only been crushing once a year. I would like the ability to crush twice a year if it's necessary. But we typically, last year we crushed in January, and the year before, 2 years before, we crushed in March, and we were done.
Okay, when you're crushing, I'm kind of confused on another question that comes up. So if it's January, how are you running water in there? Doesn't that,
No, we just run hot water in our truck and feed it through the
Oh, it's
line.
hot water.
We put blankets down to cover the line, and it's fine.
okay, all right. Well, it was just kind of confusing to me.
Frost blankets.
You know, I just thought it'd be freezing up.
No,
Yeah. Okay. All right, and when you explain crushing, you explained it very well, but I'm confused about some data. And you talk about stockpiling recyclables at 15,000 to 35,000 cubic yards, then yielding 3 tons of product. I understand that once you crush concrete, you remove the steel out of it, right, or the metal?
yes.
And where's that going to be piled?
That gets piled and we put it in a dumpster and recycle it.
There's a dumpster.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like one of these dumpsters that they put on the back of a truck.
Yep, a roll-off.
A roll-off?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where they put that. And where's that going to be on site? Right next to?
That'll be right next to the crushing operation, and it's only there when we're crushing.
Okay. And then I'm trying to understand how much, I know it's an estimate, but to get 3 tons of your product that you want to use, I gather, recycle, how many stockpilings of the recyclables? You got that in cubic yards, and you got the other one in tons. And I'm trying to figure that out.
Right, because we haul it in by the cubic yards, and then we crush it and sell it by the ton. So typically, it's 2 to 1. So if we bring in 15,000 cubic yards of rubble, and we pile it, and then we say, okay, we have enough to crush. Then we crush it, and we'll generate 30,000 ton. It's the same amount, it's just one's ton and one's cubic yards.
Okay, all right.
And we could have 15,000 cubic yards, or we could have 25,000 cubic yards piled up to crush.
It'll be 2 to 1.
Well, no,
Oh.
yardage. We might have a bigger pile to crush. It might be a smaller pile, but minimum we want to crush is like 15,000 cubic yards.
Okay, again, on page 20 of Closure B, you talk about backup alarms or white noise. Does this include all your track equipment? I mean, like your dozers and that too?
No,
So they're going to
but
be
our
on the-
dozers really aren't working in the yard. They're just getting loaded and unloaded and walking into the shop.
in the shop. They'll be unloaded in the shop? then?
No. They'll be unloaded outside on the ground, and then we'll bring them in and we'll just park them, and then we'll bring them into the shop.
But they
when
have
need
the
repair.
noise beepers then, right?
When they go in reverse, yes, for safety.
Okay. And the skid loaders, the same thing? They got noise beepers too?
Yes, they do.
Not white noise?
I don't think the skid steers have white noise.
And we were talking about slamming tailgates is prohibited. I've never driven a dump truck, but I'm trying to figure out, how do you enforce that?
How do you enforce that?
Yeah,
By managing our employees and the people that are bringing in our stuff and putting signs up on there.
okay. Another question I want to throw on you there. Are you operating this by your own employees bringing in recyclables, or can John Doe come in with a dump truck and dump recyclables on your property?
Yes,
You are
we have a
accepting-
little bit of that.
You got a little
The
private
majority of it, I'd
contract?
say 90% of it is ours and 10% of it can be John Doe.
Okay.
Or they can go up to Forest Lake Contracting or North Pine, Sunstone.
Okay. The new maintenance shop you're proposing, will it be air-conditioned, or will the doors be open in the summer?
The doors should be open in the summer.
Okay, so that noise will escape there too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Will there be any work done out on the yard?
Very minimal.
I'll give you an example. Do you have all your trucks, are the tires handled by your mechanics? Or do you have a contractor come in and rotate your tires, or?
We have a vendor that comes in and does our tire work,
Yeah.
but we are looking at getting a tire machine for our new shop.
But does the vendor do it out in the yard?
Yes.
All right, so he's got a compressor on his truck and the whole works going too?
Yes.
And my final question on noise is, what time do you believe everything will be shut down? No fueling of trucks running, no maintenance in the shop, et cetera?
Well, on average, we usually shut down about between 6 and 7 by the time all the trucks float in.
And all the fueling's done? I don't
We
know if you-
fuel out on the jobs.
Oh, you do?
Well, the trucks fuel it on site, yes. They come in and they fuel, and then they go
Park the rigs? And
Yes.
And the mechanics will be out at the shop, or will they be working till 8 o'clock at night, or?
No, typically not.
So everything's quiet, like about 7?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of just trying to coordinate data here so we're not throwing questions
Right.
back and forth.
There's times, I'm not going to lie, there is times when there's emergency situations. We do a lot of railroad work. They call us, there's a derailment, they need us now. Boom. We don't even have to obey the frost laws because they have jurisdiction over the highways. We can haul our equipment when there's road postings out, and we can haul heavy loads. When there's an emergency, or the Corps of Engineers where it's flooding somewhere, we got to gear up and go. So we gear up and go, but we're not noisy.
Okay. All right. That one area of noise, I'm going to end my questioning on, but I'm going to yield the floor to my other commissioners here if they have any questions about noise or activity that goes on there. So start with Chris.
Sure. Hi, I'm Chris. I do have a question in it would be page 19 of your noise. You show, what is that, a backhoe up there?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sitting how high on the rubble?
I suppose that's probably 25, 30 foot.
Okay, so you got the backhoe sitting above, and I know you're focusing more on the crushing itself and trying to convince us that that noise level is pretty low. I'll speak in here more. But I look at this picture and I see, okay, you're going to have your berm at 10 and your fence at 8 to 10, but you're going to have a backhoe that's up there reaching down, grabbing the rock. There's noise generated there. And that's different from the decibels you're showing there. And that's more of the noise that is maybe harmful more to the residents that are back there. And how do you mitigate that? Because you're not going to build a fence that's 30 feet high to be above the rubble, I'm assuming.
Well, we are going to have 25 feet of clearance with line of sight. So we have a 10-foot berm, a 10-foot fence, and then we're lowering the elevation of where that's going to happen by 5 feet, so it'll be 25 feet.
but you're still going to be a little, the potential of being over there because it is still there. So, I mean, it is a concern that should be looked at because it's not just the crushing that I'm concerned about. That's one aspect. The other is everything else that goes along with the operation. And Ron had brought up about the backup beepers on your tracked equipment. And I know based on your site plan, you have 88 spaces towards, what is it, the north edge. And there is a neighbor back there, I think, that if you are starting those up to load them, you got backup beepers. If you're loading them early in the morning, you got that noise associated. How, am I correct there?
But keep in mind, like I said earlier, that our equipment isn't, we don't want it in the yard.
Well,
It's on the jobs. The only time it comes in there is to service it or store it for the winter. We leave our equipment on the jobs all winter long when we can. So those equipment that's parked there, it might be a Bobcat trailer and a pickup. They're going to start it up, yep, and they're going to drive over where the skid steers are parked, and they're going to fire it up and load it up. Fuel is, you know how expensive gas and diesel fuel is right now, right?
Correct.
Well, we've been monitoring it for years, and we have a policy that we do not let our equipment idle more than 5 minutes. So the equipment isn't going to be sitting there running for a long time.
No, and I realize that. I mean, I realize that you're in the business to make money, and running fuel and idling your equipment is a waste of money. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
And really my point is it still is a nuisance to those neighbors back there that they possibly early in the morning, and unless you can convince me that there's never going to be a piece of equipment back there, you could be starting up a piece of equipment and or your mechanic could need to work on something back there when they start their shift at 4 o'clock in the morning. So there is that potential for that noise. Is there or is there not?
The equipment will make noise,
Okay.
okay?
Yep.
And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to refer to my chart. A food processor is 95 decibels. Our equipment is not that loud. And as at a distance and the screening that we're providing, that dissipates to down to 53, 54 decibels by the time it gets there.
You know, I sat through a public hearing, it was quite a few years ago, and there was some items going on with trucks and heavy equipment that was on a site. And a gentleman brought in a backup beeper to show the council what that really sounded like. And granted, in here, it's very loud. Mm-hmm. But to flip forward, I lived close to the site that this was, and sure. I could hear them all the time. So be it for short durations or long durations, it still is an annoyance to residents that butt up against that property. That's my point. And your 10-foot fence, I don't know if that's enough to buffer that. So my big thing is, besides the crushing, I believe there's a little more activity on your site that's going on that generates noise.
Okay, so you're right, we generate noise. But I will reiterate the buffering by the trees, existing trees, the berm, the fence. But it also, we don't start the equipment up and drive backwards with it. That's not safe. We start the equipment and we drive forward onto the trailer and turn it off, load it, and leave. So you're not going to hear any backup alarms. You might hear one occasionally if they have to make an adjustment, but they're not driving around backwards all over in our yard. Absolutely not.
Well, no, and I don't believe that they are driving around backwards all over. I'm just kind of anticipating some equipment that's parked, and you might have to back it out of the location because you might have some of your other equipment stored there, and you need to get one piece out that needs to back out. So you are backing out in that. That's a possible scenario.
It is a possible scenario, and it probably lasts about 5-10 seconds to back it out, and then you're in forward.
but it is a possible
You'll get a
scenario.
couple beeps if you do that.
Right. And you can understand where that type of noise, even for a couple beeps, can be an annoyance to residents early in the morning or later at night. I mean, that really is
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of the, so
If
that's,
it would annoy me too if I had listened to that all day long.
Right.
But that's not that's not what we want to do. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to annoy people.
you know, I understand that. You know, I don't think you're in the business to annoy people, and I'm going to assume you want to be a good neighbor and everything, but there is that potential. And the big part that becomes a problem is those neighbors call the city. And then the city staff has to deal with this, which takes them away from what they should be doing. So there's another flip side to the whole scenario there that we need to look at also. So that's just kind of there. Let's see. I think that's it for a minute with the noise.
Okay.
Barb?
Barb, do you have any question?
I do question the fact that you're saying your drivers don't bang their tailgates. I mean, that's common practice. I was just walking on Furman, which is, I don't know, a mile from Lake Drive, and me and another resident were walking, and all of a sudden we heard a boom. Like I say, that's almost a mile away. And she said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's what dump trucks do to remove every piece of soil in their dump." And I can't imagine how are they going to get it out if they don't boom
A lot of them have vibrators on their boxes now. It
Well, then you're
vibrates the bottom and
creating
it shakes it right
vibration.
out.
You know, that's another issue, is the vibration is also a noise. Everybody knows how heavy semis are. You're saying that you have a turning radius of, 75 to 90 feet? So obviously you've got large vehicles moving around. That creates vibration, you know? And that's also a noise, and it's annoying.
What I don't understand. What's a vibration of a truck
From
turning?
you said that you're going to have gravel. So if you're moving these 18-wheelers around, there's vibration.
They're not 18-wheelers. They're dump trucks.
Well, what are all of your 500 vehicles that you're going to store there? They're all dump trucks?
No, they're loaders. There's motor graders. There's dump trucks. There's pickups. There's trailers. There's compressors. There's water pumps on wheels. There's all sorts of equipment on
Heavy
wheels.
equipment, right? And it doesn't make noise when you drive it across?
No.
No? When you hook up a low boy to put a tracked front loader on, that doesn't make noise?
I'm not saying it's silent, but it doesn't make noise that people can hear all over the place.
Well, we just heard a dump truck a mile.
A dump truck, yes, when they slam their tailgate, I'm saying, yeah, I agree with you. They will make noise.
But your guys aren't going to do it when all the other guys,
Not if we prohibit it.
well,
If that's a,
to me, doesn't seem realistic to say that. Because they all do it. You hear it, you know.
well, if they do it, then they're not allowed in there to dump then.
Okay. Accepted.
I mean, all I can do is manage it to the best of my ability and eliminate the problem. And if somebody is doing that, then you're done. You can't haul in here.
All right. I have nothing further.
Bob?
Yeah, hi, Bob here. Sticking with the theme of noise as a potential nuisance, I want to refer to your safety program. You had mentioned a safety officer, which implies that you have, as a large contractor, you have a pretty comprehensive health and safety plan
Yes, sir.
in place.
Yes, sir.
And in addition to your safety officer, do you have any other safety staff that
Yes.
works? How many do you have?
We have two.
Two? And that covers Minnesota and North Dakota?
Yeah.
Yep.
And and our safety manager, officer, and 2 others that work remotely, and like one in North Dakota and one here traveling around. But we train all of our supervision and our employees, our operators, our laborers. We have 2 to 3 days of training every winter on safety. So we consider we're all part of that. We're a team. We're all trying to be safe, not just, but there's 3 designated people that monitor consistently and manage it.
Do you have an environmental company that you contract with to do your monitoring? Air quality, noise, abatement, any of those things?
American Engineering and Testing, we've used Braun Intertech.
When you talk about noise and DBA and all that, who actually does the monitoring for you to determine those levels?
Well, we have somebody come out and monitor while we're crushing.
I'm trying to figure that. Who is they?
We'll have, I don't know if we used American Engineering or Braun, but we'll have somebody come out and monitor, and then we'll be with them when they do it. And then we can monitor after that, to make sure it's okay.
So you have on-site equipment to monitor?
Yeah,
and
we have that.
Do you
yeah.
send those results out then to determine those levels, or is that something
No,
you
it's,
can do?
the levels are spit out right there.
Okay.
So our safety manager manages that. So if there's not a problem, then we don't do anything, of course.
Yeah. What would you consider a problem
Well,
related to noise?
if it's getting
to
above
prompt-
the acceptable levels of ordinances.
So how often do you do your monitoring for that?
Well, if
Is
we're
it
crushing,
complaint driven, or is it a systematic?
we don't monitor if we're not crushing. I'll tell you that, okay? But when we're crushing, we'll monitor probably when we first start crushing 3 times a week, and make sure it stays the same, consistently the same. And then after that, as long as nothing changes, we'll monitor once a week.
Once a week during crushing operations?
Yep.
And that's written in your policies?
Not in our policy, no.
How did you determine the frequency of those testing sequences?
When we got our permit with the city of Fridley, that's when we did.
Yeah.
And then we had to show them our noise levels.
Good. That's all the questions I have at this point, but I have many others, so stay tuned.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. Real quick, you mentioned earlier that you had, how many dump trucks?
We have 13 dump trucks, 12 dedicated to our paving operations, and 1 that just works with our commercial guys.
Okay, I might be getting confused because your numbers on 439, that must be the ones in Minnesota, then you got some in North Dakota, because you got 25 down here for dump trucks.
Really?
Yeah, on page 439 of this.
In the narrative? Well, that's wrong then.
Well, then I was kind of confused about, now, what is a loader?
That number maybe was for future growth. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's fine, because when you said that number, I looked and I thought, this is.
Yeah, we did have some side dump trailers that might have been included, but we sold those. We're not running those anymore.
Well, I just want to check another one. When you got the term loaders here,
Wheel loaders, yes.
wheel loaders. Now,
Yes.
Is that like not a front end loader?
It's a front end loader, yep.
So you got 50 of those?
No.
No, it says 50. I thought that's a lot of loaders if it's a front end loader. You're talking about big tires?
Well, maybe if they might have included that number with the skid steers, because they're loaders too.
Okay, all right, and you got fuel trucks, you got 5, no, fuel and lube trucks, 5.
Yeah, but they're not there. There's only one that we use here, and then the rest of them are in North Dakota
Okay,
job sites.
when you mentioned 12, I just thought, I seen 25, and I thought,
Yeah.
maybe it's a typo, I don't know. We're going to go on another topic now, dust, and I want to ask, you got side dumps, right?
Nope, we don't have any side dumps.
It's all dumped?
We did, and we got rid of them.
Okay, all right. So do your dump trucks, do they have covers to prevent leakage? I mean, like road
They
leakage?
have covers. They have
Yeah,
tarps.
covers?
They have automatic tarps that cover.
All right, are they always covered when they come in with recyclables and covered when they go out
No.
with product?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Okay,
If it'll blow off the truck, they're covered.
they will.
If it'll blow off the truck, they'll cover it by law. And if it's hot asphalt, they're covered to keep the temperature in.
Okay, so you don't have any leaky loads. That's what
No.
State Patrol calls it, leaky loads.
Okay.
On page 440, you note truck watering and street cleaning practices. I notice in all your equipment, you don't have a street sweeper, but you probably have a skid loader with a brush and all that?
No, we have a street sweeper we use at the shop, dedicated to the shop.
Okay, I didn't see it in your list, but
Sorry.
may it be. And so are we talking about, are you going to keep that street 137th or the paved road
Yeah.
swept? And how far out are you going to go? You're going to go to County Road 23?
Yeah.
And sweep all that, and then you'll bring back the rest?
If we track out onto that road, we will sweep it up.
Okay. Or if a contractor comes in?
Yeah, but generated by our facility, our site, we will clean it up.
Okay.
That's what we do now.
All right. Well, you talked a little about dust earlier and stuff like that with the watering system. I didn't know how that operated. Like I said, I was confused about doing it in the wintertime. And you said you did it this last January, and you call it Fridley, and I call it Spring Lake Park. Where are you?
Our office is in Spring Lake Park, and our shop is 2 miles down the road in Fridley.
Okay, all right. So you did it in January last year, so you contracted this person to come out?
Yep.
And they do it, and okay, all right. I'm going to yield the floor to you, Chris.
Me again. Okay, for dust, you say you're going to sweep 137th. What puts that in action? Is it the drivers that tell you, or do you got somebody out there? Or what actually is your process for making sure that road is kept clean? Because there's going to be other companies along that road, and as they come in, if it's not clean, they're going to be generating dust and it's going to be shooting all over. So what's your policy for enacting the cleaning of it?
Well, we have managers on site, so we will be monitoring it. And at the end of every day or middle of the day, we will sweep it.
Now, your whole site, pretty much with the exception of the road and the parking lots, is gravel. And how do you contain the dust there? And I know there's been talk that, the prevailing winds and all that, and it's not just crushing, it's everyday activities we're talking about. There are times wind swirl, there's times we get gusts. How do you control that from going off into the air and people's property? And I know you say they're far away, but there still is dust clouds.
Right. Yeah, there's dust gets generated. I know what you're saying. When we have truck hauling activity going on, we water for the path, so it's watered down so it eliminates the dust. That's where the trucks are hauling. So if we have a lowboy trailer come in with a bulldozer that's broke down, he'll pull in, and we don't water his way in. He pulls in, and he's driving 5 miles an hour at the most, so that any dust is just rumbling around the tires. And he stops and unloads his dozer, and they put it in the shop to fix it. We all know that 99% of the time the wind's blowing out of the west, blowing to the east. So it's blowing towards Lake Drive.
Which is a problem too,
Sure it is.
because we got a lot of drivers on Lake Drives and they
But we
don't.
have a lot of other contractors on Lake Drive.
I
And the
know,
wind
but-
blows in all directions. and-
Correct, but you're the one who just mentioned that it'll blow on Lake Drive, so I'm just emphasizing we don't want that either. So
No.
we're not talking about the other ones
No.
right now, we're talking about this statement, so.
If it is
I
a
get what
problem,
you're saying.
Chris, we will water it down.
Okay. I think I will pass it. I got some other comments later on it, but for now, thank you.
Okay. We'll yield the floor to Barb. Do you want to? Okay, Bob?
Staying with the dust in the water, where do you get your water source from?
From our well.
So you're going to dig an on-site well
Mm-hmm.
on the property?
Yes, sir.
How far down is the aquifer?
I'm not a well guy.
Well, you've done some preliminary studies. Obviously, if you already say that you're going to have an on-site well.
I haven't
Just
done any
curious,
studies. I've just talked to a well guy and gotten an estimate. I haven't looked at any studies or anything.
And it makes a difference how many gallons per minute it can produce and so forth and so on. So how many times a day do you have in your written policy to water down the traffic area?
When the dust is a nuisance, we water it down.
So it's
And,
subjective?
yeah,
Okay, how do you determine that?
but when you see the dust,
Well, there's varying degrees of dust, right? So
Right.
Dust has a density level to it, and it also has a particulate matter that carries in a plume. So do you have experts on staff that will tell you we're at that threshold where we need to water?
I guess you could say we have experts. They're not, they didn't go to school in dust control, but we've worked in plenty of road jobs where we have to control the dust for the traveling public, and we monitor that. And when it gets too dusty, we water for dust. I can't verbally explain how much dust there is to when you.
So roughly
trigger.
how many times a day then do you water?
It depends on how dusty it is.
Which is my question on.
And if it's raining, it doesn't, or if it just rained, it lasts for a while, and then
On
when it
average,
dries
I mean,
out.
You've got good experience because you've been in business for so long. On average, in a similar situation, I'm trying to get a handle here
Okay.
on how often you water on an average case basis.
As far as where we're at now for our crushing operation, or just in general on a road project?
Just at your existing location, do you grind up and recycle gravel, concrete?
Yes.
Okay, so how many times a day do you water?
Well, we have asphalt going in, and I'm not there all the time, but I would say maybe, I don't know, a few times a week. There's not a very long path where it's not asphalt. And there won't be here either, because there's the asphalt road going in, and then they're jumping across and dumping. And then they're back on the asphalt path. So there isn't a long path for that to create dust. Now, sweeping, I would say sometimes we sweep 2 to 3 times a day.
Is that a water sweep or is that a dry
No,
sweep?
it's just a Elgin Pelican, those.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And as far as the water well, if we don't have enough water, then we go buy a meter and go down to Lino Lakes where there is a water main, and we pay for the water to keep our water truck full.
Okay, so you would bring in water trucks.
Yeah, we would have a water truck on site. Oh, yeah. And that's how we do it on all of our road projects and street projects in residential areas or wherever. We rent a meter from the city and we buy the water from them, fill our truck, and we use it for dust control. We use it for compaction.
How many gallons of water does a typical truck hold?
3,000.
And during a normal spray application of water, how many gallons do you typically lay down?
I would say for the site that we're proposing, probably 100 gallons a time. It's not going to be that much of a area that there's gravel area. It's going to be coming in on the blacktop and then turning.
Yeah, not just,
So it's just watering a short area.
not just during gravel operations, but all truck traffic operations and so forth. You water that down as well throughout your facility, right?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. If it's dusty, we're definitely going to.
That's all the questions I have for now.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to go to an area now about traffic, okay? And I'm just going to ask you a quick question here. I know I see some of your competitors, I think, out there. And when you go do a road, I don't know, do you do like 35 down in Albert Lee or something like that? Would you do a big project like that down there? Or I guess what I'm looking at
Yep.
is when you haul these dump trucks down there, do you just park them and the employees show up in their car?
No, the dump trucks don't leave. They're only for the metro area.
Oh, the ones here?
Yep,
the
because
metro.
they're dedicated to our paving operations. So we only pave in the metro. So when I talk about we work out of state and in rural Minnesota, we sub out the paving or the concrete for the highway. We just do the earthwork and the utility work, the pipe.
Oh, that's your expertise, is that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I would say it's paving too. We do very, very good and a lot of it in metro.
okay. Well, I was kind of, you probably heard of Schaefer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I see their trucks, like when they did 35 out here, they were all sitting out there, and the employees would come there and get in them. I just didn't understand how your operation goes. But the number of trucks going down 137th kind of concerns me, and I know we don't have a real number. Your attorney made a comment that it wasn't really 300, it was
60.
300 is the round number, is still just a couple of single-digit change in existing traffic on the road. And Bolton and Mank has concluded there's no traffic concern from the amount of traffic that's going to be generated by this site. Bolton Mank says that right in the report.
Sir, could you speak in the mic, please?
Whether it's 260 or 300, it amounts to a low single-digit change in the total traffic on the road. The road's being improved in the location of 137th with the left turn, et cetera. There's a project in the works by the county to improve the whole stretch of road. And Bolton and Mank, in the report that it's submitted to this commission, says there's no traffic concern from the amount of traffic that's going to be generated by this business.
Okay, well, I guess I maybe wasn't going in that route, but there's other businesses going in there now. We got Street Smart going in farther up the street from you, and that's traffic. And I mean, if that's what the engineer says, I look at the amount of vehicles, like you said, private contractors can come in and dump their asphalt or whatever, and that's kind of a no man's, you don't know how many are coming in, am I right? Or,
Well, they have to check in. We don't just let anybody come.
well, I know, but I mean, let's say John Doe's trucking,
Yep.
he calls you up and say, I got 8 trucks loaded coming in. And you don't know that until it happens, right? Or is this pre-planned ahead of time?
It goes both ways.
It does?
Sometimes they'll call me and say, yeah, I need 1,000 ton today. Can you load me?
Okay.
I think I can. Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, but that's the same with recyclables coming in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if someone's tearing something up, they may call you up in the morning and say, we got 10 trucks.
Yeah, typically when it's hauling in the rubble, they'll call me beforehand, so I'm aware of it and ready for it.
Okay.
And just, it's Ron, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we have a dozen dump trucks that go out every day. And then a dozen dump trucks, they come back at the end of the day. We have 2 to 3 lowboy drivers working. Mostly it's probably on average 2 running. They leave, they might be going to North Dakota, they might be going southern Minnesota, but sometimes they come back and sometimes they're gone for a few days. So there's a truck. We have a fuel truck, and we have several mechanics trucks. There's probably 2 that will be in the shop that will run out if something breaks down on the job, and then they'll come back. So that's about 20 trucks right there for the day. Just going out and coming back. Now, you add on top of it, if we're taking rubble in, there'll be more trucks. But like I said, we don't haul rubble from Bloomington or Edina or even Maple Grove or Coon Rapids. We're not going to haul it way up here. It's too far. It's not cost prohibitive. We're going to haul it to the closest spot. So you're going to have trucks coming in all the time as far as the recycling process goes.
Okay, I'm going to get off topic here and go into another thing. If you're granted to put this business in our city, are you going to close the other one?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I just wondered. All right, that's about it on traffic. I'm going to pass it over to yield the floor to
To me?
Chris. Are you ready?
To me again. I think the question still comes down to 137th. Now, this is a 10-ton road, correct, Dean?
I'm sorry.
137th was built to 10-ton? Do we know?
I don't. Elizabeth may.
I believe it was.
Elizabeth?
It's either a 10-ton or a 9-ton road. It's one of the two.
So I know you say you have maybe, 12, 13 dump trucks going out, coming back. You got a few fuel tank trucks, you got some, I suppose you got half-ton pickups, three-quarter-ton pickups
Yep.
that are in and out and whatever else. But you also have your equipment coming in for maintenance. And big equipment breaks down. How much of that is brought back in each day for service, roughly?
It's not very often. Because when we bring a piece in, we try to fix it on the job. It costs money to haul it all the way in and then haul it all the way back. Unless it's a major where we have to bring it in, we bring it in. If it's a hydraulic hose, little stuff, we fix on it. If we have to put new tracks on it, we can do that out on the job. But when it's engine repairs or a hydraulic pump problem, we bring it in to fix it.
I'm kind of getting the feeling that this site is going to be empty 99% of the time and there's going to be no traffic. And I just don't buy that.
No, it's not. It's not.
I mean, based on what and I know, I know you're not trying to sell me a bill of goods here, but it's kind of leaning that way that there's not much equipment stored on here and that the focus mostly has been on crushing. And I just don't believe that's all that's going on that site. I
hear what you're saying. I probably come off that way, but in reality, that's what it is. The trucks go out and then they come back at the end of the day. Yes, there's superintendents that, I need more safety supplies, or I need wood lath for stakes. I need paint. I need whatever. They'll run in and get the stuff at the shop and then leave and drive back. That's in a pickup, usually a 3/4-ton pickup.
So then back to the other haulers that bring in rubble or want some picked up. How many do you see of those roughly a day? On an average? Let's say on a high day and a low day.
On a high day, I would say 2 to 3 trucks per hour on a high day.
And that's in and out,
Yeah.
right?
And a load, sometimes there isn't any trucks hauling in. A lot of the time.
Okay. And I know what our city engineer's report stated on Lake Drive. And I know there's Semstone, there's Ryback, there's multiple, there's Forest Lake Contracting. We have a lot of big trucks coming back and forth on that road. So I know Anoka County has said that it's not totally utilized. But we have a lot of citizens that drive that road. And I've driven it many a times during the day. And with the trucks turning in and out of these facilities, it does create hazards. So I mean, for all of us to be concerned about that, that is why. We've driven it with the amount of heavy equipment, big belly dumps, cement trucks, whatever is coming and going. You got possibly your trucks coming out, and maybe it's infrequent, but say you got a trailer pulling a bulldozer or whatever it is, they go slow as they start up and get up to speed.
Yep.
That backs up a lot of traffic, and we've all been behind this, and during rush hour traffic on that road, it creates hazards, and people drive crazy. And we all get impatient, and you get people doing stupid things, but that road, even with what the county says, is still a hazard. And we are all concerned about that with more traffic. So I just want to make that statement that even though it is said both by Anoka County and by our city engineer, we all have driven it, and all our citizens have, and there is a lot of concern on that road from a lot of the citizens here.
And whether I'm in here or not, that truck traffic is not going to stop. It might increase
I
a
get
little
that.
bit, yes.
Yes, okay. So I know it's not going to stop, but it's still a hazard. That's my point, be it you're here or not. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Barb. I'd also like to continue on this traffic issue since you brought it up. I did go over to your site over on 81st, and when you exit that property, when you go up to 47, that's a controlled intersection, and you have 3 lanes, a left turn only, straight through lane, and a right turn only. And I'm sure that's very, very effective for getting your equipment out on 47, which is a 4-lane highway. Ours is not a 4-lane highway. It's a 2-lane highway. You have a stop sign at 137, not a controlled intersection. And you're saying that that's not going to be a problem. If you go to Lake Drive, rush hour, it's 55 miles an hour. And I'll tell you, a lot of people go faster than 55 miles an hour. If you have a slow truck pull out of there, it's going to take them 2 blocks to get up to 55 miles an hour. So what is your plan to, your lawyer just said that it's not a problem. That's not a realistic statement. It is a problem to have heavy equipment pull out into 55-mile-an-hour traffic without a controlled intersection. So what is your plan to handle that?
Is it my,
With all due respect, when the Waldens platted their land, the city weighed in on what was going to be required for 137th Street, knowing that that was commercial industrial land. The time to visit that question was at the time the Walducks platted that land and built 137th Street. There's heavy trucks pulling in and out of Lake Drive all the time now from multiple other
I'm
users.
aware of that, sir.
This is not going to be any different than what's already happening. So his plan is the same as every other user on Lake Drive.
But his business over on 81st does have a controlled intersection.
yes, it does, but I'm going to be pulling out on Lake Drive like every other business does.
you're adding more to an already very busy road.
Yeah,
And it's we have 3 main roads. There's Kettle River, there's Lake Drive, and there's Broadway. We're not set up like Spring Lake Park is, or Blaine, or any of them. They have all sorts of roads. We do not have that kind of a road system. And just because we do have other businesses that have trucks doesn't mean that we should necessarily add another business when we've already reached a very high volume on that road. And our residents shouldn't have to worry about more trucks on that road.
The comprehensive plan talks about density of users in commercial industrial zones. Keep in mind the comprehensive plan specifically contemplates that there's going to be increased intensity of commercial industrial use on this specific land. I mean, the city's already decided that. Wants more users here on this land. There's no specific provision in your code regarding the density of use, but average in the metro, which is in your comprehensive plan, is between 8 and 33 jobs per acre. This is what, about 25 acres? So you're talking potentially for another commercial industrial user, 100 or more jobs would be consistent with commercial industrial use if it was some other kind of use. A lot more traffic, perfectly honest, by most commercial industrial users. His use is very land intensive and therefore vehicle non-intensive compared to many other types of commercial industrial uses. And his use is, quite frankly, at the low end of scale of density that's contemplated right in your own comprehensive plan, both in terms of people on site and vehicles on site.
Sir, you're talking words. We're talking, we live here.
Yeah.
And we're worried about the
Yes.
health, safety, and welfare of our citizens.
Yes, you live here, but the city thought about this for years and enacted a comprehensive plan just a couple of years ago that specifically guides this site to be built more intensively for commercial industrial use. Are you going to ignore your own comprehensive plan? And that's exactly what the city decided it wants, is more users here on this site more intensively, more cars. I mean, that's right in the plan itself. And this use is completely consistent with the guidance in the comprehensive plan that was adopted just a couple of years ago, after years of work by the city.
That's all I have.
I would like to just kind of go back to the comp plan too, and part of it is to maintain a safe and efficient road transportation system. So there's multiple facets to all of this. I mean, I could kind of dig through here too and pick out more things, but I think we're just bringing out a point that we're concerned for the safety of our citizens. And we all understand that what the engineer's report was and what our comp plan says about traffic and development and that stuff, but we're concerned for the residents. That's part of this too.
and we don't want any accidents. So I do know that the Lake Drive is, that's projected to rebuild the road and improve it in the next 5 years. Now, I'm not a road designer, and I'm just a road builder. Somebody else does the designing, where they need passing lanes and where they need 2 lanes. But this was put out to Anoka County. They evaluated it, and they set the criteria of how 137th would go in, and they made the Waldocks put in a half-a-mile long left turn lane to go up, turn in, and add a right turn lane. And that's what they did to do this development. They didn't say we had to put in acceleration lanes. So I can't tell you what to do there. All I can say is that we're going to we'll be as safe as we can, like anybody else is driving around in the city.
Well, do you have anything else, Barb?
No.
Can we move, Bob, do you have anything you want to talk about traffic?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. the traffic flow from the south and to the north and from the north
On Lake Drive?
on Lake Drive, what percent? And I suspect it's going to change given the projects you're working on, but would you say that 50% comes off of Highway 35 up Lake Drive? Or would you say 50% comes down off of Highway 35 and 97 to the south to your site? What percentage of traffic goes either way, would you say on average?
My guess would be 80 to 90% is going north up to our facility from
Yeah.
35.
Okay, yep,
From 35 going north. Exiting our facility, 80 to 90% going south on Lake
South.
Drive.
okay, all right. Talking a little bit more about your health and safety plan, I'm assuming that you have DOT training as part of that
Yes, sir.
comprehensive plan? And do you have restrictions on the number of hours that your drivers can drive?
Yes, sir.
And it's all contingent based on DOT regulations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's it related to traffic at this point?
Okay. I think those are three of the major points we want to get moving along here. So what I'm going to do is just open up the floor to the commissioners. If you have any other questions you want to discuss or ask of the applicant before we open this up to a public hearing.
This is Bob.
What?
I have a question
What?
or
Yeah.
two.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. View.
So we should have asked this right out of the gate. What brought you to Columbus?
That guy right there, the realtor. I should have said this earlier too. Where our current location, it's way too small. It's not safe. We've damaged equipment because we don't have enough room. So we've outgrown it. We need to move. And we would like to stay in closer to the city, but there's nothing available for us. So
Was Columbus your first choice?
Columbus? This year it was, or last year it was, yeah. That's the only place I've looked at last year. We looked at a place 4 years ago.
Where was that?
That was in Blaine,
Blaine?
yeah.
What kind of reception did you get from the city?
They were very welcoming
And why didn't you build in Blaine?
because it was right next to a housing development, and the housing development people did not want us in there. And so they voiced their opinions, and the city council voted it down. The mayor wanted us in. We had planning commission recommended us for approval, and then we got turned down. And so then we tabled it for a while.
After you get into your new facility, wherever that's at, regardless of what city it's in, what are your growth plans beyond that?
We expect 5% growth. We try to get 5% growth a year. As far as volume goes, that doesn't mean how much equipment you have.
And a lot of it depends on the federal infrastructure plan
Exactly.
and everything else that goes with that.
Actually, I'm expecting us to shrink down a little bit in the next year with the recession coming on. But we're built, this site will accommodate us for 50, 60 years
At its current size.
at its current size and with growth.
Okay. That's all the question I had at this point.
Chris?
Yeah, I just have a few more. These are kind of miscellaneous. I was looking at your site plan, and you have phase 1 and phase 2 of your office building warehouse. And phase 1 actually sits back, and phase 2 is in front by your parking lot. Why?
Because we wanted the shop further away from the street.
And when is your plan that you thought you might add on to phase 2?
The next, I don't know, maybe 5 years? I don't know.
And how are your employees going to like it that you got the parking lot and then all the gravel leading to the business? Just wondering, because your plan view shows your parking lot, then it shows your proposed site for your for phase 2, which is gravel, then it shows your business. So I'm assuming.
There'll be walkways.
Okay. Also, there's a 60-foot gate that is on the west side. What is that for?
The gas company.
Oh, okay. That's the only people that would ever go in there?
Yep.
Okay. Plowing through the winter? Do you plow the entire lot?
No.
So there won't ever be the potential. Like, have you ever been open a full year where you have done work 12 months?
Yeah, we do work in the wintertime, commercial work, for building construction. They want us to, dig footings, backfill footings for a new building. We'll do that, but road work, we don't do any.
Okay, so then as far as your plowing and that, you just plow the areas you need
Yeah.
to maintain
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
And Barb,
No, I have nothing further.
you have nothing further? Well, guess we're to the point where we're going to open up the public hearing. And I think the way we're going to operate is we'll do this room first, maybe. Elizabeth, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Would it be best to start like in one room and do the back room later? Or when we open this up to a public hearing? Or-
I think you can take this room in order. I know there's others in the next room that want to also speak. So I think if you want to take care of the.
Okay, we'll take everybody in this room. Anyone who has an interest in this matter and wants to present testimony as evidence on the issues, please acknowledge themselves by stating their name and address, after which you'll have the floor to speak. So we have a table up here with the microphone. Thank you you must have known what was coming up. And if we have one party, Sue Wagaman, if you want to come up first. If there's anybody else after Sue, as soon as Sue's done, just raise your hand and you'll get the floor. So.
Hi, my name is Sue Wagaman. I live at 13530 Zodiac Street, Columbus 55014. Mr. Chair and Planning Commission, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight regarding the park construction application. As you know, I am a member of the City Council, but I am here tonight as a citizen. I've lived on Zodiac Street for over 30 years and have enjoyed the rural nature of the city and intend to live there for several more years under the same conditions. I am here tonight to respectfully request the Planning Commission to recommend denying a conditional use permit to park construction. I have nothing personal against park construction or the Waldocks. I realize park construction has put a lot of time and effort on information and reports on how they're going to fit into the area. Although I am here as a citizen, I reviewed the ordinances and am basing my request according to sections 7A 602, 7A 740, and 7A 543 of the zoning ordinance. It seems I'm interpreting them a little bit differently than the Park Construction Legal Counsel, so this is going to go in a different direction. Before I get into the ordinances, I just wanted to repeat some of the information that I gave at the May 4th joint meeting, which is when most of the residents currently living on Zodiac on 141st bought their property, which 30 to 50 years ago, that property that's adjoining on the west side of the Waldock subdivision was zoned residential. The full parcel was split. A third of it on Lake Drive was commercial, and the other 2/3 to the west was zoned residential. And then over the past 10 years or so, things have happened. The Planning Commission and Council, at the request of the Waldocks, made a few attempts to rezone that property. At that time, it didn't pass. However, after a couple more attempts, only 10 acres of that full 80-acre parcel was kept residential. And so there's residents that directly butt up against the commercial area, one on Zodiac and a couple on 141st. Now, in the commercial district off of the freeway, so over off 35, there are zoned areas for mixed use, which creates a transition area between the general commercial and the residential. And that really should have been done in this area, but because it wasn't, there really should be some special considerations due to the impact a large commercial business would have on residential property. So first of all, starting with Section 7A 602 of the zoning ordinance, it says that Articles 6 and 7 contain the use provisions of each zoning district. Use is not listed as permitted, conditional, or interim uses shall be considered prohibited. Park construction operations include 2 uses that are prohibited: the asphalt, concrete crushing, and the backhauling and storage of sand, which is noted in the planning report. I mean no disrespect to park construction. I'm sure it's a great business, but this type of business does not belong in this commercial industrial district, especially next to the residential area. The denial could be based on that alone, but I'll continue with how it fits it doesn't fit according to the other parts of the ordinance. 7A 740, which defines the purpose of the district as the overall character of the district is intended to be transitional in nature. Thus, industrial uses allowed in this district shall be limited to those which compatibly exist adjacent to the commercial and lower density activities, and in this case, residential. This business is not transitional in nature and cannot compatibly exist next to residential houses and a horse farm. The definition of compatible is capable of existing together in harmony. This business is the most intrusive business I can think of, with several trucks on site hauling concrete several times a day, truck beepers, which I know is going to happen, dump truck back ends clanking and running around the clock. Their hours of operation are really 4 a.m. to 8 p.m., and it does see there's some activity at 1 a.m. The actual crushing activity, which they're talking about the recycling, a few weeks out of the year, is really not the biggest concern. It's really the daily dumping. I mean, they're coming in, they're picking up, and they're dumping concrete every day. I don't know how anyone thought that this was a fit. This is not compatible. This type of business belongs with other similar businesses, like the area they're located now in Fridley. They're in an industrial park with semi-truck businesses on one side and a railroad track on the other. That would be considered compatible. Not next to residential houses that is historically known for peace and tranquility. This is not transitional or compatible. I did pull out a couple things out of the Columbus 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Goal number 1, growth management. Bullet 1 states, protect the rural character of the city. Bullet 2 states maintain land use patterns which ensure compatibility and function of uses. Goal 2, land use. Bullet 4 says prohibit unplanned commercial or industrial uses from developing near residential areas. And although I know that this parcel was zoned commercial before the comprehensive plan was completed, it's clear to me that the intent is not to place commercial industrial uses next to residential areas for compatibility concerns. There is the property on the east side of that district. There's no residential on the other side of the commercial, so where Semstone and the other ones that were mentioned, there's no residential on the other side, and I don't believe that's an issue, but it's a different story on the west side. Section 7A 543, general standard applicable to all conditional uses. A, will be harmonious with and in accordance with the general objectives or with any specific objective, the city comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. So as I already stated above, park construction would not be harmonious or in accordance with the zoning ordinance or general rural nature of the city. I've only been on the council for 1.5 years, but have understood the direction of the Planning Commission and Council to preserve the rural nature and reduce the amount of large vehicles in the city. B, will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use not change the essential character of the same area. I was looking at the pretty pictures that they have in their packet and how nice this will look. They have beautiful fences and trees that make it look like a park. Well, if any of you had a chance to visit their location, it doesn't look like a park. It doesn't even look like a general contractor business. It's really kind of the dirtiest place I've ever seen. It may look nice for the first few months after construction, but after that it will significantly get worse over the years. C, will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. Everything I've mentioned so far would be disturbing to existing neighboring uses. The trees and screens they've proposed to mitigate this are not sufficient, and I don't think anything would be sufficient to mitigate the noise of the dump trucks. But I want to call out on another agenda item for this meeting is to discuss the residential home business ordinance. One of the biggest concerns for residents living next to a home business is sight, sounds, and odor. If someone wants to have a home business, our ordinance has a statement prohibiting any equipment, activity, or process which creates noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors, or electrical interferences detectable to normal senses. If we're so concerned about small businesses encroaching on a neighbor, why would we not be concerned about a large commercial business encroaching on a neighbor? They would be our neighbor. D, will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police, fire, drainage, refuse, and schools, or that the persons or agencies responsible for the establishment of the proposed use shall be able to provide adequately any such services. I can't comment on how this will be able to be served adequately by essential public facilities, but I will say there's a very good chance that their vehicles will have a tendency to want to go down 4th Street and Pine Street to avoid the traffic signal on Main. Pine Street is a 7-ton limit. It would not be suitable for a 10-ton load. This type of traffic could have an impact on the normal lifespan of those roads. E, will not create excessive additional requirements at public cost
for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. I believe park construction would be detrimental to the economic welfare of the residents on Zodiac and 141st. According to the article in the Blaine local paper, the Hometown Source, which I have attached a copy of that article, dated May 24th in 2018, when park construction tried getting into Blaine, and I quote, "A Blaine resident contacted the firm CBRE, which is a very reputable firm, to analyze the effects that park construction company would have on 11 residential parcels along 103rd Court and Xylite Street, which are just north of the park construction company where they want to occupy. A CBRE appraiser concluded that park construction's development will result in reduced market values for the residential properties that abut the proposed conditional use permit on Xylite. This study would have to apply to residents wherever park construction wants to go, including our residents on Zodiac and 141st. F, will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and conditions operations that will be detrimental to any person's property or general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, smoke, noise, fumes, glare, and odors. One of the regular operations that will take place is the pickup and dumping of concrete that creates massive dust, silica dust, which is considered a health risk. They say they have measures in place to address the trucks driving on the roads, but during the hauling activity, it doesn't specify how they would address the dust from the trucks dumping the concrete. I don't know how you can stop dust plumes every time a truck dumps concrete or asphalt, and I don't know how Columbus would monitor the requirements for watering the piles and the gravel road. We currently don't have a compliance officer and would allow them to manage it loosely. This will be a health risk and detriment to persons and property in the area. G, will have vehicular approaches to the property which shall be designed as not to create an interference in traffic on surrounding public thoroughfares. And although Anoka County has stated that Lake Drive is underutilized, it doesn't seem like that most days. It's obvious there will be several more vehicles per hour during peak times on Lake Drive. At the end of the day, during the heaviest traffic, there will be multiple dump trucks with trailers. I know because I visited their existing site during peak time. There were several that they had to be 30 feet long. It was like a dump truck with a trailer. With traffic as it is today on Lake Drive, say if 3 of them were wanting to take a left onto 137th from Lake Drive going, northbound, there wouldn't be any room for anyone to get around on the bypass, and this is going to create a massive traffic stop and is a potential hazard to the citizens passing through. They did mention they have a left turn lane. I didn't see that on the map, so I don't know. I just didn't see that. Last but not least, H, will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of a natural, scenic, or historic feature of major importance. I believe a historic feature of major importance is the existing residential homes and horse farm. This would definitely result in a loss or damage in property value. In conclusion, I believe there are businesses that fit in this area, like Blake Drilling, Street Smart, and Frontier. They have little impact on the adjoining properties and fit the overall character of the area and are transitional in nature. I don't believe that park construction fits the description and the character that we're trying to preserve in our city. I hope I have made it clear that according to the Columbus ordinances, this business does not fit, and I'm respectfully requesting the Planning Commission deny a conditional use permit to park construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. What was the next party? Steve Wagaman?
Well, that's hard to follow.
I didn't say it in the beginning, but that's because we probably knew people, but I suppose you're supposed to say your name and address, so
I will do that.
thank you.
My name is Steve Wagman. I'm from 13530 Zodiac Street. I'm going to read a letter that my dad wrote to the city, just to put it in the record. But before I do that, I'd just like to say a couple things. First of all, I'd like to thank the chair and the commissioners for giving us the opportunity to speak. Also, I want to make it crystal clear that I have no issue with the wall docks, and I'm sure that Park Construction is a very good company. Nothing that I have to say is personal against Park Construction or the wall docks. I'll do my best not to do that, but there are some issues that have to be addressed. I will start by reading my dad's letter, and then I have a couple comments I'd like to make afterwards. This is basically a history of what he has gone through since he's moved to his property there. And I want to acknowledge first that I understand that it was a completely different administration at that time, so I'm not aiming this at anybody here or on the council or the Planning and Zoning Commission. So here I go. I first want to say this is from my dad, Perry Wagaman, from 13640 Zodiac Street. I want to say a bit about the predicament this proposal will put me in. First off, my property was purchased in the mid-70s as a retirement guarantee. We spent years building what we considered a beautiful farmstead and nature area where we intended to live out our retirement years if we could, and if we could not, it would certainly sell for enough to provide for a nice retirement. Simultaneously, while the federal government in the 2008 recession pretty much wiped out our particular type of business nationwide, the business we'd run for 40 years, the city of Columbus negligently built a road, which is Joe Durrell, to the rear of his property and cut off every bit of drainage, severely flooded and pretty much destroyed it for sales purposes until major repairs have been completed. He has been forced to remain here, and instead of retiring, he's had to continue working, not what he had in mind for 86 years old. Now, this particular fiasco is the fourth major assault that the city of Columbus has cast on me and my property over the 20 years, certainly killing any joy that there was to be had living here. I've been informed a few times that the city has backing of the League of Cities in lawsuits. First came the flooding and the city's refusal to be of any help to mitigate the problem. Then came the city's willingness to help the neighbors increase the value of their property while destroying the value of mine. They simply rezoned and moved their property line problem to my property line. Second assault was a ferocious effort by the city to permit a massive junkyard, or what was considered can't remember what it was.
Auction?
Auction, thank you very much. But they were going to park 10,000 junk cars there at the auction, with all of its effects right up to the lot line of my residential property. The third assault, of course, I fought like hell to prevent the junkyard, so they vindictively rezoned the neighbor's property industrial right up to my lot line. This was done strictly to enhance the value of their property, openly stating that now they could put whatever they wanted there. The mayor at that time even maliciously suggested a rock crusher. The willingness of the city to facilitate the greed of the neighbors is beyond my imagination, and now to even consider bringing the worst possible industry next to anyone's residential property is unbelievable. Now, I am sure you are all concerned about how this will affect the city, good or bad, so I will try to stick to how it'll affect me. Number one, has there been a environmental study? As well as residential, this is a beautiful nature area. There is a Minnesota statute, 561.01, that says that a person should be able to enjoy living on their property. Could this statute be used against the city for knowingly permitting such a vast nuisance to be endured by the neighbors? I have for 40 years earned a living with my horse business, which I am quite sure will not be possible going forward if this disaster is permitted. How do I replace the income? There is no doubt that this will kill the value of my property and will certainly adverse the effect of all the neighbors' values as well as their health. So one neighbor can greatly benefit financially. There will be dust, including various dangerous silica dust and diesel smoke night and day right in my backyard, all of which cause cancer and other serious diseases. They say that they will run the water through my property. And that, I do know that because I'm on the Rice Creek Watershed Board, and that is the plan. Through my property, the city of Columbus saw to it that the water, with all of its pollutants that are dangerous to humans, waterfowl, and animals, both wild and domestic, will come onto my property and remain there until it evaporates and leave behind any and all pollutants. Remember, if this happens, it is forever and it will shape the future development. Is this what we want in perpetuity for our city, just so one family can enhance their inheritance? There will be unbearable noise both day and night. Their promised business hours will be their office hours. However, there will be equipment running and trucks coming and going both day and night. There will be lights and lights flashing, beepers beeping, engines idling and roaring, people talking and hollering, all for me and the neighbors to enjoy. Of course, I will need to share the added nuisance and danger of additional truck traffic on Lake Drive, which is now being used as kind of a staging area to support the already truck-heavy business in this area with the other residents of Columbus. Pine Street and Forest Street are not built to handle the added pressure. Who will pay to redo them? Please know that I'm not against the Waldocks developing their property. Only please don't allow their obvious greed to harm our health and the livability of our neighborhood, not to mention our property values. I am quite sure if this project goes forward, I will need to move and somehow establish my life. This will probably not be easy at my point of life. I am sure that there are more issues. Will you please consider them as well as the ones that I have listed? And then that is the end of his letter. And I just had a couple things that I wanted to add to that. And I actually wrote down a few more as the applicants were talking that are just quick things that I'll cover. But I would bet that if I asked every resident in Columbus, would they not like to raise the value of their property, I bet you that every person in Columbus would like to raise the value of their property. I don't see how significantly raising the value of one person's property at the expense of the property values and enjoyment of the neighbors is treating all the citizens of Columbus fairly or equally. Another issue, I understand that Anoka County said that County Road 23 could handle more traffic by numbers. I think when they did it, I believe they just put a thing across the road to count traffic going through. And I don't believe that's the crux of the issue. I was down at Park Construction. I've been there about 3 times, and I was there 2 nights ago, or 3 nights. I can't give you the exact night. This was about, I would guess it was probably 6:45, and there was 3 dump trucks lined up in a row. And in between those 3 dump trucks, there was another truck the size of a dump truck with a full-size trailer on the back with heavy equipment on it. They were parked waiting to get into the parking lot. just like they would be if they were turning left on Lake Drive. And it's half a block long. I'm not sure how a turn lane would be, a passing lane would be effective under those conditions. I don't know how long they can be or whatever, but that seems to be a concern. And then I do have one other question. I cannot understand, why do the Waldorfs continue to try to put businesses in our community that have already been turned down by most of our neighboring or by other neighboring cities? So in that respect, I humbly ask you to vote no for the same reasons they've been turned down in every other neighboring community they've tried to move into. And then there were a few issues that I saw when they were given their presentation. One being, talk about the wetlands that are on the west side of it, and I think there's some on the north side. But I am on the watershed board, and I know that any of those wetlands can be mitigated away through the wetland banks, and they can be used right up to the lot line. So that really doesn't solve anything, having a wetland there. Also, I'm not an expert on pipelines, but I have read some, and the ones that I've read, most pipelines that I've seen do not have a problem with you using their easement as long as you are willing to move your stuff if they have to get to the pipes. So that easement can be used for parking, pretty much anything. I talked to the pipeline guy that was out there from the company, and he said they could even build a road over it. And as long as they're willing to move it if they have to get to it. So, then let me see what else I had here. Oh, and another thing, they were talking about the equipment, when it backs up, it's only for a few seconds or a few minutes. If you would like, I've got my phone here, and they back their equipment into their buildings to work on, and I sat and taped it and videoed it on my phone, and it took them about 15 minutes to get one vehicle in the building. And I talked to the guys that work there, and that's their job. That's what they do. They work on equipment in these buildings. They're going to be bringing it in all the time. And it doesn't take 2 minutes to bring it in. And I believe that's a problem. Let's see. There's 3 pieces of equipment working on the building on the lot that's right behind them now, where they are intending on going. And I can tell you that today, in my front yard, I can hear them as plain as day. And there's 3 pieces of equipment over there, and they're talking about 540 some pieces closer. So when they say there's only one neighbor close and the other neighbors aren't, I'm one of the neighbors that aren't, and I can hear it as plain as day. So I don't know about that noise issue. I have a real concern about 4th and Pine Street because it's already starting. We have dump trucks coming down 4th and Pine Street now. I wouldn't say frequently, but it's getting more and more frequent because the traffic, every time traffic gets backed up on Lake Drive, it can be backed up all the way to the freeway. 4th Street's the answer. You take 4th to Pine to Lake Drive. And I mean, in my opinion, they'd be foolish not to do that if they could do it. So I don't think that's a good idea either. Trying to remember if I had anything else. I believe that's all I had to say. My wife gave all the major issues that I had. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Wagaman. We have another party who wants to step up. Oh, you dropped a sheet. You could give your name and your address, sir? For the people, there's some chairs in the other, if you need a chair.
Okay, my name's Perry Wagaman at 13640 Zodiac Street. I'm the one that lives directly behind where Park Construction would like to build. I'm only going to take a couple of seconds. You already listened to my son do my whining for me.
Okay.
So you go, I've got some real problems though with this. Number one problem I have is it'll ruin my home. It'll also destroy the value of the property that I have that I bought because I thought it was going to be great residential property for development later, and that's going to kill that. Also, I'd like to mention, I've been in business, I was in business for 62 years, and I listened to all the things that they tell you that they're going to do, and that's all nice, and it's a pretty picture they painted. But things change. Over the years that I was in business, a lot of things changed. It goes up and down, and hopefully for Park Construction, it's going to go up. But what the things they're telling you today don't mean a damn thing about what's going to be next year or the year after. And I'd just like to remind people that once they come in there and establish themselves, I don't know how you're going to patrol what they're doing. I don't think there's any possible way. So once they're there, I think they'll do as they very damn well please, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's just my opinion, but I think it's a pretty good opinion. So I don't think there's any way you can enforce what they're going to do. The business that I have there now, I've been doing there for 40 years. I moved here 40 years ago, and I have tried, I don't know if everybody will agree, but I've tried to be a good citizen. And this, as far as I can see, will force me to move. I've got a couple of reasons for that. One is the fact that, well, it would irritate the hell out of me to start with, but that isn't the only thing. My hearing is just about gone. I hear with a cochlear implant, and frankly, that noise consistently, I can't wear a cochlear implant out in my yard with that noise. So I'm going to have to either stay in the house or be deaf. So there's no way I'm going to be able to stay there. And there's no way I can run my business there. And I certainly will appreciate it if you'll consider that before you make a decision on this park construction business. And I want to say too that I was pretty impressed by the questions you guys asked and how diligent you are with what you're trying to do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the chamber here who'd like to get up? We have another party here.
Good evening. My name is Darren Zabinski, 6711 Pine Street.
Eric, could you spell your last name?
Zabinski.
Thank you.
We just purchased our property here 2 years ago, so we're pretty new to the city. And we came here because we thought it was a beautiful place to live. I've got 3 kids, 8, 6, and 6 months. We finally got a piece of land that 2.5 acres. We came from Brooklyn Center during the race riots. So we wanted to raise a family in a place that was beautiful and where we could have our forever home. Had we known that we would have an asphalt plant behind us, we probably would not have chosen this property. And if Columbus is going to go the way of industrializing, we will probably decide to move again. We want to be the next generation of Columbus citizens. We want to raise a family here and create good citizens for this city. But if Lake Street is going to become the highway of asphalt and construction, we will probably end up moving again. Thank you.
Thank you. Here comes somebody else in the chambers.
Yeah, I'm Roger Nace. I live on 6636 141st Avenue Northeast, Columbus, Minnesota. NASE. So as was stated by Park Construction there, heavy civil contractor. And by heavy, they mean intensive. They have a lot of equipment. And it's really beyond imagination that this massive construction company would be proposed on a site adjacent to the residential property. From the planner's finding of facts, they have 550 construction vehicles and equipment that are proposed to be on this lot. And I'm just trying to imagine 550, just counting all those. That's just enormous amount. And I'm just shocked by that number. Track vehicles alone, 88. And they're planned to be parked up closer to my property. You know, and who has 88 tracked vehicles? A super large construction company, and I feel that will dramatically affect the quiet enjoyment of our residential properties.
Roger, can you move the speaker a little closer to you?
I can move a little closer to it, so.
Thank you.
So we strongly oppose the park construction CUP request due to the negative impact on the surrounding residential properties and the residents themselves, and request the park construction CUP not be granted. And I don't know if my slides, you may have a copy of my presentation. Okay, you did. Okay, good. So I'm going to go on to the slide number 2. Where we live and why we moved to Columbus, I have a map kind of shown in there. And we moved to Columbus 12 years ago. We were looking for a place like this for many years. We really love the beautiful woods and the quiet rural setting. The field adjacent to our property, or we selected property that was surrounded by other rural residential properties and not next to commercial industrial property. The field adjacent to our property where the proposed park construction CUP is was all rural residential property when we moved in. We love our beautiful, tranquil property with trails, chickens, gardens. The value of our property will be impacted negatively, devastated, I think, with the massive amounts of construction equipment, the constant dumping, truck hauling, and dumping with end gates slamming, backup alarms beeping, concrete crushing going on all day for weeks at a time. The hours of operation seem ridiculous, 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. with some loads coming in at 1 to 2 p.m., 1 to 2 a.m. Park construction is on the extreme opposite end of the land use spectrum from the adjoining rural residential property and should not be the transition business between the commercial, industrial, and residential. There are businesses out there that could be good tenants and blend sufficiently with the adjacent properties, adjacent residential properties, but this is not one of them. So we have a 990-foot border that we share with the Waldock Field. About 900 feet of it roughly is a shared border with this proposal on the north end of the field. You can see where our 2 gardens are, and you can see our house and pole barn. So our gardens are just behind the proposed area that they would be parking their tracked vehicles. A review of the park contractor CUP application. There's a large amount of information there, 542 pages. A lot to get through. In just a few days that we had business days, like last Thursday or Friday is the first I knew that it was available, so it was a lot to go through. But we recommend not approving this CUP, but if someone disagrees, please allow more time to pull in experts for the concrete crushing, noise, silica dust dangers, whether backup alarms or what other issues may still be open, because this is too important to get wrong. The city engineer feels it would be a good idea to have noise reviewed by experts in the area, and has more questions on how the dust will actually be controlled and watered. I included his excerpt there on regarding noise concerns surrounding the crushing operation. He says a more detailed evaluation by someone with expertise in this area would be required. And that was from the city engineer. I did notice that when they showed the image of the loading from the backhoe into the rock crusher, they didn't turn the rock crusher on. I kind of was interested to hear that, but that didn't get turned on. How much water and how these piles will be watered, and how much dust will blow before they get watered. Those are questions, and I think I talk to them a little bit more as I go here. But the concern we have, one of the concerns, and I think I bring it up again, is they make the statement they'll water as necessary, or they'll do something as needed, and those statements are statements, but they don't. There's no measurable way to say that it is valid. It's time to go water. So in someone's mind, in my mind, I might go, wow, there's a dust storm over there, it needs to be watered, and then maybe in somebody else's mind, they'd go, that's not a problem. And I could see the businesses and the residential properties around might kind of see it quite a bit differently as far as when that might need to happen. So I like the line of questions, trying to identify how you need to do that. I heard about watering driveways and watering roads, but I didn't hear much about how they water the piles and of the debris and the crushed concrete. So I'm still a little confused as how that is done. So anyhow, I think I've got some more questions on that later. So moving on to slide 4, the CUP approval status. You have to forgive me, there was a few slides here that I had the titles wrong, and I was working on them kind of late, so and a couple of typos and stuff, so I apologize, but I have them straightened out here. If you want a new copy, I'd be happy to give you one. So CUP approval standards is the title of this one now. And then I reference the Columbus Planner finding of facts. And then please review section 9 that defines the CUP approval standards. I guess in general, we don't see anything harmonious about this proposal. We assert that the CUP proposal does not meet the approval standards listed in sections B, C, and F. I have blown those up. They're very small in the copy you have, but I have them now expanded. Section B will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so as to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance and with the existence or intended character of the general vicinity, that such use will not change the essential character of the same area. And then C was, section C was, will not be hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. And section F will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person's property or general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or others. So we don't believe, and our assertion is that they don't meet those standards. Hours of operation is on the next slide, on slide 5. We think that it's crazy. Trucks moving, equipment coming in at 1 to 2 a.m. near residential property just does not seem like it should be allowed. They're talking about paving a lowboy and fuel lube trucks returning to the yard at 1 to 2 a.m. after moving equipment from the job site to job site and refueling equipment. Outdoor equipment operating hours during the, construction season have been listed as, in their parks narrative, as 4 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is also unacceptable and not compatible with residential neighboring property. There would be essentially constant noise from dawn to dark or near dark, and could be dark depending on the time of the year. I did include an excerpt of the park narrative that provided that information. In what I was seeing, I was hearing numbers on trucks, but I remember reading in the narrative that there was like, in morning there would be like 20 to 40 vehicles, and then there would be 5 to 10 vehicles per hour at the, what do they call it, the non-peak hours, and then there'd be another 20 to 40 vehicles coming back in the evening hours, the last 3 hours. So that amounts to 10 vehicles per hour, or 1 vehicle every 6 minutes coming in to the yard. And I think that'll be consistent with what we saw when we were over at Park, and we visited Park as well. And they're right up against the railroad tracks right now, and it looks like a really good spot. It might be too small, but it's a type of neighborhood and the type of surroundings that they really should be in. We visited there between 7 and 8 p.m. A dump truck full of concrete pulled up to dump about every 5 minutes, which was close to the 6 minutes estimate. When they dump their load, the driver revs their engine to make the hydraulics operate faster and dump quicker. When dumping the load and the concrete falls out, I was surprised by the plume of concrete dust that actually rose up into the air. I didn't think of that actually earlier. We saw no water being applied to any of that dumping operation or those dust clouds, to prevent that dust from rising up into the air. We were there we watched for 15 minutes and 3 trucks came in. Of those 3 trucks, on 2 of them, the end gate slammed loudly, and on the 3rd one, it did not. But I don't know what prohibited is. They state it's prohibited, but it happens, and it happened to 2 out of 3 of the trucks that we saw there that night. I know that's not a very big sample size, but we did go and speak with the neighbors then. We said, well, let's see what the neighbors think. And so I think the feedback we got was the worst part, they thought, was the tailgate slamming. That was what they identified. And I guess that's kind of contrary to what Park said, that this would not occur. They made the statement when we asked, well, how late do they run? And he said, well, they usually go till dark. I mean, that could be 8 o'clock if during the right time of the year, but so that was their comment.
Let me excuse you a minute here. Butt in a little here, Mr. Is it Nace? Is it Roger?
That's correct.
Yeah. I know you got a 15-page document here. Or,
yep.
I want to give you time, 16, but we're going to run out of time tonight if we want to get everybody in here. So is it possible to brief it a little more? Or I know it's very important to you.
I will try to move faster. I think that we spent a lot of time going through this information and trying to put this together, and we think it's important, obviously, so. But I also understand that it's getting, late, and we want to keep things moving, so I will try to do that.
Okay, I don't know what is there a protocol on this? Should I have said something in the beginning? On,
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, we often ask that when we have a large number of members of the public who are here to speak, that we try to be respectful of each other's time and create an opportunity for everyone who wishes to be heard, and to not create repetitive comments. It seems as though your comments are very specific to your particular property. And moving forward, we would just ask people, if they do have comments that have already been stated, that they keep their comments to a minimum, to just say that they concur with the statements that have already been made. Something along those lines would be appropriate.
okay, you see where I'm coming from, Roger? We got another room that you don't see with people in it.
I know, yeah, and I know we had some technical difficulties, and there were all kinds of, things, so I'll try to keep it moving here.
Okay.
Okay. Slide 7, we could not find the photometric plan in the application. I did look, it's hard, as I searched for photometric, I could not find it. I know, Dean, you said you found something. I couldn't find it in the application. So it seemed to be missing, and it's a very important part to us. What are the lighting? I haven't heard anybody talk about lighting on this thing yet.
There was one.
It was attached to as part of the.
There was.
And in there, the application. Okay, so the information then that was provided. So if I go home, can you tell me what page that's on at some point? It doesn't have to be now, but then I can look it up. But the quantity and location of all the light poles, I thought, Dean, you said that was not provided when I read your summary in the planner notes. That was not provided. So that's a very important thing to us, is how tall are these light poles? As far as I know, Dean, you didn't have that information, or you couldn't find it either. That was in your summary. And then how many fixtures per pole? What's the light wattage? What is the direction these fixtures are pointing? And then what kind of shrouding is provided for the neighboring residential properties? So I don't believe that was in there. So I didn't know how to evaluate
No, we'll
that.
go on. Why don't you just go on?
Okay. Yeah, the only problem I see is that this is our one opportunity to speak in front of the people here without being actually shut off. They allow us to go until we get all of our issues heard. And since this, I don't believe, was in the application itself, it seems like something that was missing. And if it's missing, then I can't comment on it. And if I can't comment on it, then how can a decision be made? And maybe the application shouldn't have been accepted. And maybe that's an option. Maybe we could look at just rejecting the application and having them return it once they get that information. I don't know, but
I think we're going in a different area than that. We're having a public hearing here, and like I said, it's 10 o'clock almost, and we got another room.
Right. But the lighting is very important, though.
Yes, I believe it is.
And we didn't touch on that yet at all. There were no questions on that yet, so I didn't want to. Don't want to overlook it. So.
Can I just interject here for a minute, just to let you know, before the application is put into practice or is finalized with the conditions, the photometrics, the light fixtures and everything has to be submitted to the city. So when everything is 100% and say this goes forward and whatever else, you will have that information, okay? They have to meet the standards that the ordinance are, and they cannot exceed 1 foot candle from exiting the property onto a residential area. They also have to have full cutoff, and it's got to be downcast light. And the city is very stringent on this, because I make it a big deal to tell you
Okay.
the truth. Okay.
Well, I feel better actually having you looking out for me there. So
Okay, I just want to let you know that that will be addressed.
All right, sounds good. Screening, sound, and dust barrier. Park Construction, huge construction company. It does not really fit into our residential area. Blocking view, sound, and dust from our residential neighborhood and our residential property seems like it would have been on the top of Park's list to show that they care and are willing to work with us and protect the residential neighbors. But Park didn't do that. They talked about this beautiful berm and 10-foot berm and 8 to 10 foot wood fence on top of that. But Park's CUP repeatedly said that the existing thin row of almost all deciduous trees would serve as a screen, sound and dust barrier along our entire 900-foot property line. Half of those trees about are on our property line and don't count towards their screening. They claimed that that was good enough. You can see below, a winter picture and 2 summer pictures that you can see right through those deciduous trees there when the leaves are down. And so I think it's a little disingenuous to say that we would be protected by that thin row of trees. And all right, so going on to, I'll keep moving to slide 9. Below is what Park proposed to screen our property from sight, sound, and dust. It doesn't meet the screening requirements. We can see right through it. It doesn't have the 95% opacity. And what they're proposing is a security fence only down the middle of the wood line on the property line. So moving on to slide 10. We would want the city to reject this proposal, but if we were to proceed, the same berm and fence screening provided by Park on the south and west residential properties would also need to be provided to the north property, residential property. I don't know why they wouldn't have done that initially. It seems crazy to me, especially since per the measurements from the planner, our house is actually the closest house to the Park construction site. So, and there's a big difference between a 10-foot berm with a 10-foot wood fence and what that stops from noise and light and sound, and the thin line of trees that we were looking at. So that's a big deal, and our residential property would not be protected by that thin line of trees. Okay. So screening, sound, dust, again, right now you can see I highlighted the area there in the red. That's where our gardens are at. It's right next to the Park proposal. We enjoy gardening and spend a lot of time out there. It would certainly take away from our enjoyment if we could see and hear construction equipment and tailgate slamming and beepers beeping while we're out there, and then we're also concerned about the dust and silica dust that could be blown over into our gardens and into our homes. So from the public hearing that was held on 10/6/21, we had a discussion there, and in blue is what I read at that time, which was requesting a 50-foot buffer to our residential property line when the property was being subdivided by the Waldocks. And so that and John concurred or agreed with that, so that was good. I think he has it in there right now as a conservation easement. But based on the above agreement, we'd like to say that the fence that they currently have shown running right down the property line, the one that's a chain link fence with 3 rows of barbed wire on the top, would be pushed to the other side of the conservation easement for a bunch of reasons. One, is that provides the buffer between, that it was intended to provide between the residential and the commercial industrial. You don't have that big fence right down the middle of the wood line. That gets pushed back 50 feet. I mean, there's also other good reasons to do that. How could you install that fence down the middle of the wood line without disturbing the trees or cutting down trees? You'd have to cut down trees on the conservation easement to do that, and it'd be much easier to install than build the fence on the field area, which is where the 50-foot easement stops, right at the start of the field, pretty much. It'd be much easier to build it there. It'd be much easier to maintain it there. Trees wouldn't fall on it. So it just seems to make some sense to do that, and it really doesn't do John any good to have it there, because Park can't use that land anyhow, and so the fence could be pushed to the other side of that buffer, and it would do me a lot of good to have that 50-foot buffer on our side of the fence to give some transition between the rural residential and the commercial industrial. They provided a 300-foot buffer when they rezoned to Zodiac, and this 50-foot seems like it should be a no-brainer. So I don't know. Eliminating hazardous dust, moving on. We only have a few more here. During hauling activities, water will be used to eliminate dust. So when we were at Park, we didn't see that. We saw them dumping and the dust coming up as the concrete came out of the trucks. So I'm not sure how that'll be done when they're dumping out of the trucks. It's something that would need to be understood. Silica dust hazard, moving on to 15. Need an expert to review, not Park. We need some expert. There's all kinds of issues and health risks associated with the silica dust. I'm no expert on it, but it's something we would want to understand what kind of measuring devices, monitoring devices you should have, where they would be located, and who would monitor them. Would that be a third party? I don't know, but that would need to be further reviewed. Use of, and I guess we brought up a question similar to the one you had, so I won't go into it too much, but use of water for dust control on piles and crushing in freezing temperatures. I see these piles of crushed and rubble, and I don't know how they know. Like, let's say a wind comes up or a storm comes up and it starts blowing it around. Is somebody going to, like being rushed over there to try to wet down the pile, or what would be the protocol to even handle that situation? Or at nighttime when a storm or whatever would come in and we get high winds, then how would that pile get wetted down so that it wouldn't blow around? I didn't see any provisions in there for doing that. In the wintertime, I don't understand how the water, when you spray it on the pile in the winter, how that works. It just doesn't, even like in the machine itself, once they pump the water into the crusher, where does it go? Does anything come out? Or I don't know. But if you're pumping in a lot of water, some's got to come out somewhere. And where does that water go after it comes out? I'm not sure. So I think some more information would be good there. Will crushing always be done between the November and April months? I think we heard it would be, but I guess I'm not sure of that. There's a lot of statements that are, I think, as I mentioned before, that are not measurable or enforceable in this narrative, and there's a tons of them that talk about that something will be done as necessary or as needed, and there has to be a plan, and they have to follow a plan, and there has to be something measurable. Otherwise, it just won't happen. I mean, Park's idea of what needs to be done will be completely different than what my idea would need to be done. And so there just needs to be something to define what those are instead of as necessary. And I just highlighted a couple of the ones that say as needed and as necessary. I guess in summary, we believe that this is too big and too intrusive to be next to the residential property, and does not meet the CUP approval standards. And we respectively request the Planning Commission reject this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber here that'd like to get up and speak? Seeing no one, we'll go to the, did they hear me over there? I don't see you over there. But if there's anybody in the other room over in the community center that'd like to get up and talk at the public hearing, is there a microphone over there?
They need to come here.
Oh, you have to come over here to the chambers and, as usual, state your name and your address. And we'll wait a few seconds here if anybody's coming over. Here we go.
Good evening. John Waldock. I'm at 6755 Pine Street in Lino Lakes. We bought my father bought that property in 1938. In the 40s, we had an airstrip on that property, and through high winds, it was blown down. And the Corps of Engineers at one point had rented that airstrip from us for commercial operations. And then in the 50s, we had at one of the parcels, there was like a oval track for when Twin City Speedway was doing, they were using it for a practice track. So our whole life, and then when the pipeline went through, we assumed, well, this will always be commercial property. So there was never a time that we didn't assume this was going to be commercial property from end to end. Couple of the comments, when the crusher was being loaded with the thing, the crusher was actually running. That's what the point was, because you couldn't hear it. Traffic, driving on 23, if you pull out any time of the day, pretty much, you're really pretty easily to get to 50, 55 miles an hour. Traffic, trying to get off of over on Lexington to go south on a Sunday morning, that's what traffic is, because it takes you a half hour to go from Bunker Lake to the freeway. 23 doesn't have, and the whole nation has traffic. We're just not as, the more traffic they're going to bring isn't going to affect that. Anoka County, they're not thinking that 23 is full of traffic. Of course, if the freeway backs up, but those folks have every right to come down 23 is, we can't control where they drive. I think, through this whole process of us spending everybody spends money to do projects, but our thought process was from day one, 2 years ago, of what's happening right now. I think we need to think hard on putting this through. I think there's stipulations can be put in to help curb, but noise of these vehicles in today and truck traffic, and we've already got a series of these businesses in Columbus that frankly are very good companies that are in our city. And it's what that COP is designed for, and I think we need to let this go through.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else over in the community center?
Hello, Council. My name is Greg Newville, and I live at 6843 141st Avenue. When I came here, I'm extremely pro-business. I believe that
there needs to be some things done to keep all the neighbors happy, but I am for these projects. The traffic, they can't control any of the traffic. It has nothing to do with them. They're approved by this county. But they've went through what the development wants for the city. Yes, I don't know what the perfect use would ever be. That would make everybody happy. But also, I think if they could meet the needs of the neighbors, I am certainly for this project, and we do live close by it. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Good evening. I'll keep
Good
this
evening.
very short. Michelle Dobbs, DAUBS, at 13324 Zodiac. And I just wanted to say that I concur with the Wagamons, and I think it was NACE, N-A-S-E, is that how you pronounce it? With their statement. So I just wanted that to be recorded. So that's it.
Oh, that was
Thank
very
you.
quick.
Yeah, I said I just got here.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the community center?
Hi, Travis Lane, 13434 Zodiac Street. I'm just about 3 houses down from where this is going to take place. We've only been there for 3 years. We love the tranquility and the opportunity, the quietness, and I mean, we enjoy all that. And the snowmobile trail in front, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I moved here, was so I can enjoy the snowmobile trails. I mean, I get the science and the numbers and all that and the decibel levels, but in all reality, I can hear the construction that's going on over there right now from my house, and I'm not even right next to it. I'm kind of kitty corner from it. So to have these recycling and the trucks, and I mean, it's not the recycling I'm worried about, it's the daily traffic, the noise, the backup beepers that I hear on this equipment every day when I'm home. And it's 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm in to work early. And some days I'm home late, and they're still doing work across in this development. I get there needs to be growth, I get it. How high are these piles gonna be? We're talking cubic feet and tonnage, but how high are these piles? I've been downtown on Vandalia, and that pile's 60, 70 feet in the air, and they're crushing rock. I mean, how big are we gonna let these piles go? A 20-foot wall is not gonna cover that. And when there is a dust storm, who's gonna monitor it? You gonna let me come in your property so I can come over there and hose it down when it's blowing dust into my neighbor's yards, into my neighbor's horses? I mean, this guy's been here for years. He has that right to live there and do what he would like. I mean, I get the point. We need business, but I agree. I did think we should deny the CPU use for park. I mean, I don't know who they are. I haven't been to their site. I'm an industrial and commercial refrigeration guy. I deal with these construction sites all the time. It's dusty, it's dirty. I leave my van windows up on construction sites because it's just filthy. So I just wanted to make it quick and short. I think we should deny this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Is there anyone else from the community center?
I have just a second
A second?
just a couple seconds up there.
Sure.
I had something.
Real, a couple seconds.
I decided to say it.
We're not going to deny anybody to talk. Just we want to get out of here
I
by.
don't need to introduce myself again, do I?
Well,
my name's Perry Wagman.
I think you do.
13640 Zodiac Street, Columbus, Minnesota. And I decided not to say this. I was just going to be polite, keep my mouth shut. My mother told me once, if you can't say anything nice, keep your mouth shut. Well, I'm going to disobey her this time. Kind of hurts me to say what I'm going to say. I'm a little bit older, and I actually don't remember ever having an argument with a neighbor before in my life. But frankly, I believe this situation is a culmination of a greedy process that was started back in 2001 when the Waldocs decided they wanted to develop their property and they wanted more for it than it was actually worth. At that time, Mr. Johnson was the city planner, and he still is, and he stated at that time, he told the city that he didn't think it was a good idea to put residential property together with industrial property. And in fact, I'm going to quote him on something that he did say at that time. It would also be appropriate to identify a specific commercial use for the property rather than change the land use and zoning for speculative purposes. And that was Mr. Johnson's statement in 2001. Now comes the junkyard that they proposed here a couple of days now. And I want to make it clear, I'm not laying any of the blame for any of this on you people. This was a prior administration that caused you to be sitting here tonight, frankly. They decided they were going to put a junkyard there. They called it a
auction,
sales auction plant, but it was going to be 80 acres of junkyard cars that had been junked by the insurance companies, and they're going to auction them off right up against my fence, right beside my property. And the city, for some reason, I have no idea why it was, but the city of Columbus fought like hell to get that done. They wanted that junkyard in my front yard. And I fought like hell not to have it done. So frankly, at that point, then the city and the Waldocks were extremely mad at me. They were angry at me for this. They thought I caused the problem. I wouldn't let the junkyard in. So to get even then, for some reason, they vindictively, and I mean vindictively, decided that they would rezone the property without a project. They'd rezone it to heavy industrial instead of light industrial and commercial like it was supposed to be, and like the front part of the property was. They decided to put it there so that I would have no choice as to what they put there, and it was no secret. They openly let me know that. So now here, so here we are right now. This was a greedy process that started in 2001, and when I say greedy process, they wanted more for their property than it was worth as it was set up. So they rezoned it to get more money for it, which is not a good reason, according to Mr. Johnson, to rezone the property. And then to make it even worse, they went out and not only rezoned it for industrial, but they went out and found the very worst project they could get for industrial property and insist on putting it right against my property line again. And now, I don't know, I might sound like I'm up here whining, but this is the truth. I came to Columbus because I liked it. It was a beautiful piece of property. I intended it to be my home. I lived there for 40 years. I did my damnedest to be a good citizen. I don't think you're supposed to get treated like that, no matter where you live. And with that, I thank you for listening to me complain, and I'm sorry it got so late. But the truth is, this just isn't right. It isn't fair to me or the other people in Columbus.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One last time, anybody else over in the community center wants to make a statement? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Excuse me, sir. Should we double check if there's anyone online that wishes to speak?
Anybody online?
Oh,
On Zoom.
on Zoom?
Yeah,
Oh,
Zoom.
is there anybody on Zoom that wants to make a statement? I keep forgetting about that.
Yes, this is Paul Pearson, 6548 141st Avenue. I'd like to just comment that I concur with many of the concerns that have been expressed, and I would hope that you will reject this application.
Is that it, Paul?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to make a statement? The public hearing? Hearing none, I can close the meeting now, or the public hearing?
Close the public hearing.
Okay. The public hearing's closed. Been a long night here. But anyway, we got to move on. So, I know we have other things on the agenda, but we'd like to finish this up tonight, this part. Am I correct, Elizabeth, that item number the deal with Jessica, we can put off till our next meeting?
Mr. Chair, yes, we can put off the residential zone business discussion if you choose.
Okay, all right. So we'll go on with this right now. Is there anybody on the Planning Commission who'd like to make a comment or anything about what we go here? Or I'd really like to go through what Dean brought up in the closure in his discussion things here. I got to get the page. It's in enclosure B, I believe. On page 30, issues and discussion items. Right down on item number 1, section 7A-602 of the zoning ordinance includes Article 6 and 7 containing these provisions for each zoning district used, not listed as permitted. Conditional or interim uses shall be considered prohibited. And A is backhauling, and B is asphalt or concrete crushing. Anybody want to make a comment about that?
This is Chris. I'll make a comment on it. I know that, I don't know, what have I been on the Planning Commission, 4 years, something like that. Many times, I'll talk into it. Many times it has been brought in front of the city. We have the permitted uses or the CUP uses, the IUP uses, whatever it is, that are listed in our ordinance. And you cannot list everything. So a lot of times the city is asked a question on, and let's just call it on this one. It's, what is, I just want to say the correct term, building trade contractor offices. Now that's very open. So part of what we did as we started redoing the zoning on the freeway district, this question came up. And in December 8th of 2021 actually is when it went into, I'm getting tired, so forgive me, okay? When it went into being enforceable. And that's when that was added. And part of it was so that when people came to the window and asked Elizabeth, is this permitted, is this not permitted, that she could have a better answer. So we added that verbiage to it at that time because now it was stated if it was not listed, it's not permitted. And right now, as it stands with that zoning area, with the uses, that's not listed. So it's not something that I realized back in, and I think the attorney for Park mentioned that it was 2002 or something that the ordinance came into play. And I realize we have Forest Lake Contracting, we have multiple places that are on the other side. Right now we have something that lists, gives us a little meat. And that's what we wanted, was a little meat, because the verbiage for contractor office, a company comes in and they says, we fit under that. No matter what it is, they fit under it. And they could do pretty much whatever they want. And that's how a lot of things got in. And this is exactly why we put that verbiage in. So that's my interpretation of it. And I believe that where we were going with this was to eliminate some of the uses like this. So I just don't see crushing and backhauling as permitted use in that area, based on what the zoning ordinance says, and that's with not looking at any other companies along Lake Drive.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I understand that it is getting late this evening, and so I want to encourage you to have the opportunity to ask questions of staff and to continue the conversation, but let you know that you also do have the flexibility, since the public hearing has been closed, to continue your discussion at your meeting in the next 2 weeks. So a final decision and recommendation does not need to be taken tonight if there is any question about that.
And we know that.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
I just thought we'd get a feel of where we're at tonight, even though we will have a discussion on August 3rd.
Very good. Thank you so much.
But I agree with what you're saying, Chris. I know when these things come up, and we can go down even to setbacks and down farther down on a thing about storage, and I can vividly remember we don't want outside storage without being set back, without everything going. And then I just had some issues on that. I didn't ask Bob or Barb if you have any comments on this.
Well, I agree with Chris on, we spent a lot of time on this rezoning ordinances to clarify everything. And I think that statement, number one, expresses that very clearly. So that's my opinion, you know, and all of these listed items are included in that specifications that we made when we changed section 7A in the zoning.
Bob, do you have any comments?
You know, my general sense of the application and the testimony that we've heard, while we want to be receptive to new business coming to our area, we also have to be cognizant of the people who have been here for a long time, the residents around a development such as this, I believe will be impacted negatively. And I believe that the nuisances that we've discussed, I certainly understand the information that was presented by Park, and they did a good job of presenting that. Their attorney even went so far as to remind us of what our duties were as a planning commission and to help us remind ourselves of the ordinances and laws that we've put in place. So I think everything is very clear, but at this time I don't see that it's a good development project for that area. And so I agree with all of the comments from my fellow commissioners at this point.
Well, it's just so that everybody understands that we, on August 3rd, will be able to go in deep and whatever on this. I think, like Chris was talking, and like you just said, Bob, there's a lot of these little nuisance, whether it's dust, and you can say what you want about traffic, and I think we can all relate to what 6 years ago, John's Black Dirt, and all the traffic going up and down your road. It came down my road, and I don't know how that got resolved, but it was a long time, and I could see where these people are coming from. If I'd known that would have been kept going on, I'd have sold my place and got out of there. But I think we have to look at everything, and I think that's what would be good for our discussion period, 2 weeks. I think there's just a lot of data here. And I have to say, I applaud Park on some of their issues, but there was a lot of mistakes in there. I mean, I hope they were typos, but you don't have 25 trucks. One narrative says you close at 5:30. The other one said 5 o'clock. One said 4 weeks. One said 6 weeks. One said 12 months. And I understand that sometimes things get so big, it starts to get confusing. And that's what was happening to me in the beginning. And I didn't know if you were in the recycling business in the beginning. I thought that's what it was all about, almost, even though I understand what business you're into right now. And I think, but I think a lot of these nuisance and a lot of the neighbors that are going to be boarding up there, bordering this project, have some strong opinions, and I think a lot of those opinions are validated, and I can see where they're coming from. And I mean, I don't want to get into and I don't think we got to get into greed and all that stuff, but I think we have to look at the whole picture. And I think all these little nuisances add up. And I think it's something we should look at, maybe piece by piece in our discussion.
Can I
Yep.
just,
Huh?
can I say one more thing?
Yes.
And I want to just state that I have a lot of feeling for the residents. And I understand the impact of putting heavy equipment in a residential area. And when Ron brings up John's Black Dirt, our neighborhood was put through 4 or 5 years of heavy industrial trucking and mining. And because of an existing CUP, and I think that's a key thing here, is this is a CUP, and this is forever. What goes on in that land with a CUP stays forever. And what had happened to us was, and it's different from what you're looking at, but how it magnifies. There was an existing business that was just doing black dirt here and there. It was a mom and pop type family shop. And when I bought my home when I did, you wouldn't even known they were around. I mean, I bought dirt from the guy, he came, dropped it off. He maybe had a truck going out once, twice a week. Fast forward some years, and all of a sudden, we're hearing there's mining going on, and another company was able to come in and use that CUP and do heavy sand mining for construction projects. And we had belly dumps going by our house nonstop. And when I listen to dust control and noise, and I bring up about the inconvenience to the city, part of their CUP included dust control. They were going to water and they were going to sweep the street. And every day I'd come home from work, and a plume of dust would be going right in front. My house is only maybe 7,500 feet back from the road, so there was a lot of dust. And I'd get on the phone and I'd call Elizabeth and I'd say, dust control, what does this mean? And she'd call up the place and say, what are you going to do? When are you going to water? And this went on almost every day. Now, I was one small part of this. The neighbors that lived closer to this site actually had the backup beepers. They had the tailgates. They had the heavy equipment moving back there. And I can tell you, it was sickening to live next to that. From just buying into a residence in a residential area, and I think that's why a lot of the neighbors here are so concerned, is because the Wagaman spoke. When they bought in there, it was residential, and now they're getting commercial industrial button up. So I can truly empathize with the feelings they have, and I know I know the impact it had on the city. The cost to the city was a lot because they had public works down there, they had city staff down there. How many times were you said, come down and have coffee and listen to this? Or it just was a big inconvenience. But from the perspective of a resident living in an area that has heavy industrial use, it was really hard to live through. So I totally empathize with it. I also understand that there are city ordinances, there's a comp plan, and there's other rules that we got to look at besides my feeling. But I think there's enough that warrants this is not compatible to be next to residents with that type of use. And I can say that because I felt it, and it was tough. So that's all I want to end with.
Okay, Bob?
No further comment?
No comment? Barb?
We're going to have a discussion, aren't we?
Right, August 3rd.
Yeah, I'll reserve.
Okay,
There's a lot to go over here.
Okay, so we're going to close this and with the idea that it'll be continued on August 3rd, and when the commission will discuss the whole thing, and we'll vote on August 3rd and send it to the to the city council for their review. So that one's ended. We're going to go on to, we're going to skip.
Thank you.
Huh?
Tell them thank you.
We're going to skip on number 8, the item on discussion on residential zone business moratorium study, enclosure D. We'll put that off to August 3rd, correct? Elizabeth?
Correct.
Okay. And then item number 9 on the agenda is public open forum. Is there anybody that would like to make a statement tonight? Other than let's close shop? Anybody in the community center would like to come forward and make a statement or a comment? Hearing none, we'll go to item number 10, information. Planning commissioners report. Chris, you got anything?
I do not, thank you.
Bob?
Nothing here.
Barb?
I have nothing, thanks.
And I have nothing either. Item number 11 on the agenda, associate planners report. Frank?
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you very much. And on the 12th, a reminder, the attendance at the City Council on July 27th, 2022 will be myself, Ron Hanegraaff. Item number 13 is, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
This is Bob, so moved.
This is Chris, second.
We're not going to ask for any discussion on it. We'll take a vote. Chris?
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
All right, this meeting's over. Thank you very much.